Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення великої страни. Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пихцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. І душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. І покажем, що ми браття козацького
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 491 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here this brand new week, and we have massive news. The purge has begun, and we've watched the Russian army disintegrate in the south. We have not seen any clips like these before, I've got to be quite honest with you all, and it's unbelievable to watch what we could call pretty much an entire battalion tactical group wiped away on footage today. And not only that, that a real purge is beginning. It's been confirmed at this point. The purge is here, and it's here to stay. And so, starting off with our first bit of news, we have been on the hunt for Yevgeny Prigozhin, leader of the Wagner group, or former leader of the Wagner group, more so at this point. And it appears that a picture has surfaced from St. Petersburg, supposedly, of a person who looks a lot like a Yevgeny Prigozhin. Here are the pictures right here. We can see a bald-headed guy, kind of short, little chunky, and we can also see what appears to be the nose of Prigozhin. We can also see this person getting into a helicopter right here. Now, of course, considering that this guy is wearing a mask, which is pretty weird considering no one else around him, from what we can tell, is wearing a mask. This may actually be Prigozhin. He may have actually returned to Russia for a little while, and he's there doing something in St. Petersburg. We don't really know what it would be. Clash Report says this is Prigozhin in St. Petersburg today, but we weren't able to really confirm whether this was Prigozhin or not. He is supposedly not supposed to be in Russia. He has been exiled at this point, but these are pictures of someone who looks a lot like Prigozhin. And also, a lot of people are saying it's possibly fake. We're not entirely sure, but I thought I would show you all these pictures just in case if they did turn out to be Prigozhin. Here are some pictures of someone who looks a lot like him getting into the tiniest helicopter in St. Petersburg. Anyways, moving on from that and on into bigger news rather than the hunt for Yevgeny Prigozhin, we have been hearing that the purge has begun in Russia. Of course, that's what the title says. It says Putin Purge begins, and it has begun from what we can tell, and I'm going to be guiding y'all through the little bits and pieces of news we've heard today that confirms that no one in the Russian government is safe at this point. And so starting off with our first bit of news, we heard that there was a plan to assassinate Yevgeny Prigozhin, which is kind of what's interesting about this, is that he may have popped up in St. Petersburg today, and it appears that, according to Budanov, the Russians are plotting to assassinate Prigozhin. I've got to be honest with y'all, I think everyone expected that at this point. I don't really think this is exactly breaking news or anything, because we all knew that as soon as this coup was underway, even if it failed, Prigozhin would die. One way or another, his life will end. So it appears that Budanov is just kind of filling in information that we largely already knew, but we know that it's not going to be happening anytime soon either. Prigozhin is a hot topic right now, not just in the real world, but in the YouTube trending algorithms, and that means that this guy cannot be killed just right now, because if they killed him right now, he would become a martyr to the Russian public for the most part, or the Wagner units, and it would appear that he died for some kind of a cause, and that the Russian government was killing him in an attempt to hide something or cover it up, which wouldn't look good. And so they're going to have to wait a little bit. And from what we would assume that they're going to have to wait at least 6 months before they end up whacking Prigozhin in some kind of an assassination attempt. Whether he be shot or poisoned, it will most likely be months from now. But it does appear that according to Budanov, which is Ukraine's spy chief, there is a plan that is underway. Moving on to our next bit of news from Moscow, we also heard that Surovikin's deputy Colonel General Andrei Yudin, seen right here, was dismissed from the ranks of the Russian armed forces today. And it appears that he is one of the first official casualties of the purge at the moment. Of course, he's not dead. When I say casualty, I mean that he's lost his job. He may be arrested a little while later, but I gotta say, Matthew, chin line game, non-existent. Where the hell's the chin?
Man, it's all the Russian generals are either overweight or they're really rough looking. Like, I'm not trying to make fun of them just for their looks, but they really do look pretty rough.
I gotta be honest with you, man. That neck game is non-existent. It's like his head is just an extension of his neck. I don't know what's up with that. That's really weird looking. But nonetheless, this was a deputy to Surovikin, Colonel General Andrei Yudin. And moving on from just his odd appearance, it appears that there may have been some odd things going on in the background with Surovikin and Yudin. And it's supposed that Yudin may have even known about the oncoming coup from the Wagner for as long as Surovikin knew about it, and neither of them did anything, or both of them may have actually been sympathetic to the Wagner cause and would have ended up supporting it. And so, a fairly interesting development, and of course, officially, this is the first casualty of the coup. Well, the first casualty of the purge. We already know that another person in the Russian government, the interior minister, is in critical condition in the hospital due to a quote-unquote terrible accident with an ATV. We're most likely assuming that that was not just a terrible accident, that was probably something deliberate done to him, and we are also assuming he most likely will die in hospital just because the Russian government kind of needs him to. But moving on from this news, and a little bit further on into the coup news, and why Putin's paranoia is sky high at this point, it's because the Wagner coup hasn't really ended just yet. We heard today that a hacker group that aligns themselves with Prigozhin's Wagner mercenary team has conducted an attack against the network provider for the Russian government. And according to netblocks.org, their internet connectivity for the FSB, Gazprom, Rosatom, and their military installations completely flatlined today, and no one, for the most part, in the Russian government has any connection to the internet whatsoever. Now, that's pretty wild. I'm not going to lie. We rarely even see this kind of stuff whenever a mass hacking attack is conducted on the West, and whenever that happens, it's usually regional. It doesn't affect an entire government network of internet connectivity. Yet, from what we can tell, that was the case for the Russian government today. We don't even know if this has been fixed at the moment. It may still be down, and this was reported, I believe, around 12 hours ago. Well, actually, around 8 hours ago at this point. And so this is quite interesting. And Matthew, I know that you're a little bit more of a tech guru than I am. What are you making of this?
It could mean that maybe they're blocking the internet access. I see over there in the description, it shows that it's a satellite internet provider. I saw it maybe about 3 or 4 days ago, maybe a week ago, that Russia was throttling the connections to many websites, including Google and YouTube. I think actually banned YouTube over there. So I would assume that's probably more of the same.
Probably so, maybe so, but this is also claimed to be done by a hacking group that is affiliated with Wagner PMC, so it may even be that as well, and that may end up being quite serious, considering that it appears that the Russians weren't able to stop them from hacking this network today, and this may even continue on for who knows how long. Many people don't understand with the Russians that the Russians are not really that good when it comes to the hacking part of being on the internet. What the people fear the Russians for on the internet is for misinformation and deception. That's what the Russians are known for on the internet. The Russians are very rarely known for actually conducting successful hacking attacks or taking down internet networks or anything similar. And some people are going to be saying, oh no, they are. I'll have y'all know that we actually had to call up a company. I'm not going to say the name of the company on air, but we had to call up a company to have something fixed on our end a while ago, and they actually told us completely unsolicited that the Russians had been attacking this company's network for, I believe, the entire war at this point, and they still hadn't broken through it. It created some problems for the company, and of course they were having to do some preventative security measures, but they had never taken down their network. And that was very interesting news to me because I didn't know that the internet war was going on so strong in the background, and the Russians had been trying the whole war to take down this network that this company owned, and yet they never were able to. They were just able to conduct the attacks nearly weekly and then never succeeded. And so that's once again giving us a fairly good idea that the Russians will probably not be able to counter this group all too well, and in fact, they may be at their whim. But moving all the way from that and into our last bit of news inside of Moscow about the coup itself, we've heard, according to the Institute for the Study of War, that a well-sourced Russian military blogger has claimed that large-scale purges have been launched of Russian military commanders, and that the Russian Ministry of Defense is currently undergoing a quote-unquote crash test for their loyalty. Of course, the picture of Surovikin is right here. According to what is being said, Putin's paranoia has skyrocketed through the roof, especially considering that it's now known that Surovikin was actually a VIP member of the Wagner PMC. Like, there's some kind of a tier list to this thing. I guess he was like a silver tier supporter of the Wagner. I'm guessing. I don't really know. But anyways, this guy was a VIP of the Wagner. And
I wonder what kind of perks that gets you being a VIP of a paramilitary group.
I really wouldn't know, man. I guess you get like towelettes or something. I don't really know. It's a good question. Maybe you get like.
And what the hell's up with that? And what the hell's up with that symbol in the background up there on the left at the top?
Oh, that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's nothing. But anyways, moving on from that. Anyways, crash test for loyalty in the Russian Ministry of Defense, and an ongoing purge. It appears that Prigozhin's effects to the government are going to be long-lasting at this point, and it's definitely damaged Putin's psyche, because this is an attempt to try and rebuild his strongman image, and from what we can tell, the strongman image will never be returning. I don't really think any of the strongman image will return, because it's already been broken in front of the entire world stage, in front of the entire Russian public, and I have a feeling that they won't be making it too far beyond this, the government, that is, in Russia. And so we're now going to be moving on from that. And we're now going to be moving back to the actual news from the coup. Many of y'all may remember that we showed video on this channel during the coup by Yevgeny Prigozhin of a Ilyushin 22M being shot down near the town of Lipetsk. To show y'all a picture of this aircraft, because y'all might want to gather up the whole family here, because this was actually massive news that came out today that was incredibly shocking to me. This is an IL-22M. From what is understood, there were only 12 of these IL-22Ms that the Russian Air Force was using for a specific mission. And one of those was actually the one that was shot down over Lipetsk. And I'm about to take y'all to what the British Ministry of Defense has stated about this IL-22, because it appears that the shooting down of this single plane will probably have more of an impact on the war in Ukraine than anything that has ever happened yet. And Matthew, I haven't even shared this news with you today. This was shocking, and if the British Ministry of Defense is correct in what they said, this is actually a war-changing event with this plane being shot down. And so let me take y'all to this.
And how much of a war-changing event is it?
Massive. And I'm going to read this whole thing off to y'all, because this lays out exactly why this aircraft was so important. On the 24th of June, Air Defense Forces of the Wagner PMC reportedly shot down a Russian military helicopters and an Ilyushin IL-22M airborne command post aircraft. The IL-22M is part of a relatively small fleet of up to 12 aircraft, heavily utilized for both airborne command and control and radio relay tasks. These special mission aircraft have played a key role in orchestrating Russian forces in their war against Ukraine. As high-value assets, they have operated within the safety of Russian airspace, far beyond the range of Ukrainian air defense systems. The loss of this aircraft is likely to have a negative impact on Russian air and land operations. In the short term, the psychological shock of losing a large number of aircrew in this manner will almost certainly damage morale within the Russian aerospace forces. In the long term, there is a realistic possibility that current tasking levels may have to be reduced to safely manage the remaining fleet. This will likely undermine Russia's ability to command and coordinate its forces, particularly during periods of high-tempo operations. Pretty much meaning that a flying command hub was shot down. It wasn't actually surveying the Wagner. That plane was airborne at that time, coordinating the efforts of Russian forces on the front lines in Ukraine. And when it was shot down, it was the only aircraft that was airborne at that time conducting that operation. And there's only 11 of these left. And from what we can understand, a small part of this fleet is something like 20%, so maybe around 3 aircraft are used at any given time to try and manage the Russian army and the Russian Air Force at the same time inside of Ukraine. And considering that this aircraft was shot down, the British Ministry of Defense is stating that the Russians may have to even further roll back all of their operations in Ukraine because they're going to have less of an ability to actually manage their frontline forces.
And I would say they probably weren't even managing them very much to begin with, because look at what the failures were that they were already having.
Yeah, that's true, Matthew. They were saying there, Matthew, and the Russian commanders were going, hello, Illusion, what do we do? Over. And then the guys in the Illusion said, I don't know, that's up to you, man. Click. And then
Yeah,
the Russian
seriously.
commanders were like, oh, brilliant. But still,
It's really not going to change very much, in my opinion, I would assume.
I would have an assumption this is going to change a little bit, because at least this aircraft is directly connected communication-wise to Russian commanders in the field. And considering that the Russians are going to be having a little less of an ability to communicate with their commanders in the field, and those commanders are going to have to start operating a little bit more autonomously, that suggests that there may be room for some Russian units to possibly start bucking the system a little bit, because there's not going to be as much oversight on them.
Maybe. It could be.
Maybe. But it appears that the British Ministry of Defense is making the fact that Ilyushin 22M being shot down was far greater deal than we could have really anticipated at the time. When that aircraft was shot down, many people, including this channel, reported that was most likely some kind of a surveillance aircraft that was being used to track the Wagner unit's movements. And it appears that the aircraft was far more important than just being a surveillance aircraft. It was a command aircraft. Moving on from that, we are now going to be moving on from the town of Lipetsk, and we're going to be moving on over to the United States for something that we didn't officially put in the news tonight. It will most likely be coming out tomorrow night, or may even be something that's covered in tomorrow's war summary, which many of y'all may be excited to hear. That will actually be done by none other than the enforcer Matt.
Oh, hello.
And so hopefully y'all will be looking forward to that tomorrow, because he'll be putting out the news summary then. But according to news that we're hearing, the U.S. Congress is about to approve the delivery of ATACMS missiles to Ukraine. It's going to be historic. It's going to be the first time that those are ever sent, and hopefully they'll be used to great effect. They are incredibly long range, and if we look at the ATACMS system, and let me do that right here. Here is the MIM 140 ATACMS. You can see one right there. Isn't that cool? That's such a giant stubby rocket. It honestly looks like a fatter Iskander. But moving on from its shape, this thing is quite capable and quite potent. It has a flight ceiling of 50 kilometers, or 160,000 feet, which is almost out of the atmosphere. It has a maximum firing range of 190 miles. Not only that, it has an explosive mass that appears to be unlisted right here. There are only 3,700 of these missiles made, and we don't know how many will be going to Ukraine just right now. But their effect could be quite devastating. Of course, these are actually far cheaper, and considering that they're a quite old system, they are going to be way cheaper than the Storm Shadow missiles that the British have provided to Ukraine that they've currently been using right now. And considering that they will be cheaper and they'll most likely be in larger numbers for the Ukrainians will have a greater ability to strike well behind the Russian lines and begin to destroy command centers and also massive supply depots that currently were out of their range, or they didn't have enough Storm Shadows to attack with. And going off of that...
Now, I don't mean to rain on the parade a little bit, but the Pentagon did come out and say about those reports today that they were supposedly considering sending the ATACMS, that actually they're not aware of that, and they claimed ignorance, and they're saying that there are no current plans to send these, but they might be sent maybe sometime in the more long-range future, but not in the short term.
Interesting. I did hear that as well, Matthew. I was about to get to that. But still, fairly interesting to hear that the Congress is starting to talk about it and seriously consider it, and hopefully these things will be used to great effect if they are sent. From what we understand, they have a range of 190 miles, and if we were to measure that from the town of Rykov, which we'll be pulling out a measuring tape for, 190 miles would be that far into Crimea from the area of Rykov. In fact, that would actually put the Kerch Bridge directly within the ATACMS range. And so hopefully we'll see that they're sent. Right now, of course, like Matthew said, while we've heard that the Congress is supposedly talking about it, the Department of Defense has not heard anything brought their way about possibly preparing or getting ready to send ATACMS to the Ukrainians. So at the moment, it's kind of in limbo again. But I wanted to let y'all know about that because the U.S. government puts a lot of things in limbo and then they just go ahead and give it a green light. That happened with the AGM-88 harm. In fact, that happened behind the scenes with the AGM-88 harm, and we didn't know about that until after it had already been sent and used in Ukraine. They also did that with the M1 Abrams and the F-16s. They did a lot of waffling. They did something similar to this, and then finally, about a week later, they ended up being sent. And so this is big news. This is fairly big news that it's even being seriously considered and discussed, kind of like we used to hear about the F-16, and hopefully we'll see that they are eventually sent. Of course, some people are talking about, well, the Congress isn't really anything to go by either. And yeah, it's not really anything to go by. In fact, the U.S. government isn't really anything to go by any measure, because one day they'll say that they're doing something, and then the next day they'll say they're not doing that thing anymore. But at least from what we're hearing right now, from the little murmurings in Congress, it will be supposedly possible that ATACMS could be in Ukraine's future, maybe even within this year's future. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on out of the international news and on into Ukraine itself. And specifically on into a neat little clip I saw on Melitopol today. From what we can understand, this was actually a video filmed by a Russian commander that was looking out of the side view door of a helicopter window. And so here's the clip. Also, love the trigger safety here. Just ready to blast anyone in the middle of the town of Melitopol.
Man, he's not screwing around.
No, he's not. And we can see that helicopter flying off right here. And right there, we can see the remains of a Ka-52 that apparently was destroyed on the runway. From what we can understand, this little airbase at Melitopol, if we zoom into Melitopol, I'll try and show you all where it's at. It's this one right out here that they're flying over, and you can see that a while ago, actually, it appears that there was a Ilyushin 76 that may have actually been destroyed at this airfield at this time. But let's see if I can find the helipads. We can see some helicopters here. These appear to maybe be Mi-28s. Can't really tell for certain. And we can also see a charred up area over here. That doesn't appear to be where that Ka-52 was. So let's move over here. Trying to see if we can actually see this on satellite footage, and it appears that we cannot. But this helicopter was taking off from this airbase at Melitopol, and as it was flying out, we got a clear view, a very clear view, of a destroyed Ka-52. We don't know when this thing was destroyed or why, but it does appear that the thing burned to the ground right where it was sitting. Ka-52s are quite rare as well. The Russians don't really have many of these things, and you can see that Wikipedia actually lists it as a Ka-50 Black Shark. This was actually the first of the two in service. This actually was a single-seat helicopter, and it did kind of well in the Second Chechen War. It did well enough that the Russian government decided that they would want to further the design theories of the Ka-50 and further refine it into a more potent and more deadly attack helicopter. And so then they came up with the Ka-52, pictured here. The Ka-52 has some slight differences from the Ka-50, mostly in the front of the helicopter. It has an air-to-ground radar mounted inside of this little nose cone here, where it can actually pick up enemy ground targets on the ground, like it's an airborne radar, but instead for the ground. That's not really a good way to explain it, but I hope y'all get the idea. It also has an improved optics relay in this little dome here. It can actually swivel 360 degrees, and it has infrared and night vision. It is also a two-seated helicopter, so that way the pilot isn't having to do all of the gunnery work as well. The pilot can focus on piloting, and then the gunner can focus on the gunnery. And what's really interesting about this helicopter, beyond all that, because honestly, some of the things about this helicopter are somewhat goofy. For example, the air-to-ground radar is in the nose cone. On other helicopters, like the AH-64D, their air-to-ground radar, called a longbow, is actually in this little dome at the top of the helicopter's rotors. And let me try and find a good picture of that. So that way the entirety of the helicopter can be out of line of sight, but that little radar can be over the line of sight, so that way you can get a sight picture and then fire off its weapons being completely in cover, which is very intelligent and a great design theory. With the Ka-52, to use its air-to-ground radar, it would have to be clearly in the open because the air-to-ground radar is in the nose cone. It's not above the helicopter's rotor blades. So if it wants to use that air-to-ground radar, it's putting itself into danger anyways, so it doesn't really help it out in trying to avoid enemy fire. But the one thing that is incredibly cool about this helicopter, and it's the only kind in the world to have this feature, is that it's the only helicopter to have ejection seats.
Oh, what are they going to do? Eject right up into the rotors?
Well, you know what's actually crazy about this is that they sat there and someone said, oh, Comrade Blade, what are you going to do? Shoot them straight up into the propellers? And then for one time in history, Matthew, the Russians had a smart idea. There are explosive charges in the helicopter's rotor blades. So that way, if the ejection seats are pulled, the helicopter rotors actually get blown up and fly away from the helicopter, and then the ejection seats fire. And it's a little rocket pretty much attached to a rope. And so the rocket flies up out of the helicopter, and then the rope's attached to the pilot, and it pulls the pilot out of the helicopter's cockpit. So
That's pretty cool. I didn't know they did that. I thought maybe you were about to say they shot off to, like, to the side of the helicopter or something.
I think we may actually there may be a video out there of this ejection seat working. It's an incredibly cool system, I'm not going to lie. And it's one of the few things I've ever seen the Russians do that is actually something worth implementing in other helicopters, because y'all may not know, the AA-64 does not have ejection seats, so if this helicopter gets shot down, the pilot and the gunner are pretty much left to their own devices, really left to go down with the helicopter. The Ka-52 is the only one in the world that has ejection seats. And let me see if I can go off screen and find y'all a video of that ejection seat working. Just as a little side note about the helicopter. Ka-52 ejection seat. So let's see here. This appears to be a video. Hang on, let me make sure I can find this. Alright, so this appears to be the only video that we have. Funnily enough, it comes from the now defunct Live Leak. It's not graphic, though. But it shows the ejection seats in operation. This was 3 years ago. And so here's the mock cockpit. It doesn't show the rotors being blown up and flung away from the helicopter, but we can see the canopy explode, and then we're about to see the little rocket here. And we see it exploding the canopy again. And then
they're missing the one part that I was really interested in seeing, which was the rotors popping off.
Man, I'll have to try and find you that here in a second.
Those rotors would have to pop off extremely fast to be able to get them out of there in time. I'd be interested to see that.
I mean, it is really neat. Oh yeah, there's a little rocket that pulls the pilot out. You can see that in action right there. There's the little rocket. It goes flying up, and then it activates, and there's a rope attached to the pilot, and you can see the pilot being drug out of the helicopter right there.
Wow, they're going to have a rough ride on the way out.
Man, I
guess it's better than dying.
Dude, they're going to have whiplash. Like, they're going to have some really bad whiplash, I'm not going to lie. So there's a little, the helicopter rocket for the ejection seat going off again. And you couldn't really see the pilot in that one. Well, the pilot dummy in that one. I think he's right there, actually. And then a little parachute pops out. But it's an incredibly bizarre system. It's very unique. And let me go back. Let me take this back off screen. And let me go and try and find the helicopter rotors popping off. And let me see if I can find that anywhere. So I hate to say it, everyone. I honestly think the best place we could find this is War Thunder. I know many of y'all know the joke on this channel that War Thunder ends up popping up in nearly everything whenever we try and find pictures of these vehicles. So I'm just going to skip forward in this clip, because I think this may actually be the best way to show y'all how the ejection system is supposed to work. So this is a Ka-52 in the game War Thunder. I do have to put that out there. But they modeled in the game the exact way the ejection seats would work and how the helicopter rotors blow off the helicopter. So here is the clip. So in theory, that's kind of what it would look like.
That's a pretty close representation, I guess.
Yeah, you know, that's about the closest I can get, because I can't find an actual video of this thing working. So I guess it just kind of works in theory, or it just shoots them straight up into the helicopter rotor blades in real life. Who knows? But anyways, this is one of the few that they have. And let me go and try and find the number of helicopters. Here we go. As of 2022, before the war in Ukraine began, the Russians had 133 Ka-52s. And so losing a single one of these is actually pretty hard felt, because there's not that many of them that the Russians have anyways. And you can see that the only other countries to have any Ka-52s are North Macedonia, which only has 2 of them, and Egypt, which bought 46 of them. And so, of course, quite a rare helicopter. If you lose one of these, it's going to be pretty heavily felt. And you can see one of them burned out right down there on the pad. We don't even know why in the world it burned down, but it did. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that interesting news inside of Melitopol. And now we're going to be moving into our location unknowns, because there's been some incredibly cool little clips and features that have come out today from the war, showing just interesting stuff. And starting off with our first clip, we can see here a Ukrainian Su-25 on a early morning or a dawn patrol or a missile run. We can see the Su-25 taxiing to the runway in the pitch darkness. We now see it taking off. And you know something I have to ask everyone here? You know, it's cool to have landing lights and everything on your aircraft. It's really cool to have front nose gear headlights. You know, that's kind of neat. But my question is, with this thing aiming where it is on the ground, how in the world does this help out the pilot at all? You know, because this is supposed to help them out with visibility on runways at night. I don't think that's helping out the pilot whatsoever. I mean, maybe the ground crew, sure. But the pilot, I mean, like, he may as well not even see this thing. But we can now see the Su-25 lifting off. We now see it on its way as the sun starts to rise. And I gotta tell you, man, that would be very nice and scenic to fly this Su-25 like this in the morning.
Yeah, it would be. It always looks pretty cool.
Yeah, we can now see them firing off their rockets some other time. We can see it flying over a reservoir here. And we can now see that red haze in the morning. Red skies in morning, sailors take warning. Remember that, everyone. And Barry just said this was actually the clip that led him to ask about the S-8 rockets last night. And it appears that they also have the larger, and I'm trying to think, what's the name of that? I think those may actually be the S-8 rockets. Let me type that in, S-8 rocket. No, that's not the S-8 rocket. These are the larger rockets. I think they're like S-38s or something like that, but I think they're like 227 millimeters in diameter. They're huge. And we can see that it's carrying some of those. We can see it now tilting up and firing off those rockets along with its entire batch of S-8s. And we can now see the lights of the flares popping out of the Su-25 and then flying behind it. I've got to say, man, if a war movie was actually filmed the way war really looks, I think that would be a very interesting movie. Just to look at, like, visually, like this.
It would. Somebody should, like, start at the very beginning of a war, like a filmmaker, and spend, like, basically their entire career filming the whole war in, like, one movie.
Now, that would be amazing to watch. That would honestly be a documentary that would be one for the century. Like, one that everyone will look back at for an entire century and go, that was impressive work.
You know, somebody that would be perfect for the job is that guy who's making Oppenheimer. Well, what's his name? It's Nolan, I think.
Christopher Nolan?
Yeah, he would make the thing so realistic you'd feel like you were in the war.
I want them to feel the tactical nuke. But anyway, moving on from that, really cool to see that morning dawn footage of an Su-25 in action. And moving on from that, we saw a Ukrainian artillery crew loading up their BM-21 with 120mm rockets. All right, we're going to mute that.
Oh, yes.
We can see them here with all of the crates with the rockets inside of them, and we can see the two guys standing on the back of the grad over there that then guide the 122mm rockets into their respective tubes. And I want to tell y'all don't want to tie these tubes. Oh, man, I'm telling you, it would be terrible. But we can see them messing with the rockets. And, of course, it's a whole-of-crew approach to getting these rockets into the system. But with that, that's the end of the clip. And pretty interesting to see how in-depth of a loading process this really is. You would think it would be simpler, but it's not. We're going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, where we also saw a Ukrainian soldier with something very precious and dear to him. A child. A child, which is called an AK-74, baby! And he got the Bakelite and everything.
He took this rifle is mine, and nothing's like it, to a whole other meaning.
Dude, he sat there and said, "Man, this thing is my child, Blair." It's like, yes. I mean, like, I'm not gonna argue against someone with a full AK-74 in a pram. I think you can't really argue with anyone at that point. You just have to go, "Yep, that's your baby, that's your child. Yep, all right, we got you." And also, Matthew, notice the Bakelite. Some people in America would kill for that Bakelite.
That's true.
That's true. And by the way, if y'all are wondering, I have a Bakelite. they're actually pretty neat when you see them in person. They look like they're made of wood. They really do. And you'd never believe that stuff until you see it in person. And then it's like, this thing looks like it's made of wood. But it's actually a very early plastic. Anyways, getting out of that rabbit hole about the little AK-74's Bakelite mag. Really funny to see them kidding around like that on the front lines. And now moving on into something that is no joke. It is the Russian casualty report. And they are certainly being treated as a joke, but the losses are no joke at all.
They're getting some good, nice Bobcat losses once again. They're back up to 6.
Man, they're back up to 6. And Yams put in, Shoigo! My Bobcat does a head spin. Let's see. What else do we have? Show more replies. We have another one.
Said great equipment losses next to yesterday. I'd have to agree with that. We had 0 yesterday.
I would agree. I would certainly agree with that. We had 2 Bobcat skid steer memes and 6 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. An absolutely impressive day as far as the special equipment losses go. Also, we've seen that 680 Russian soldiers have been lost over the past 24 hours. Quite a high number. That is just around 120 short of an entire battalion tactical group being destroyed, and I am fairly certain that tomorrow's number is going to be astronomically high compared to today's, because we saw a lot of footage showing that some losses were being taken that you just wouldn't believe. And so we also saw that today there were higher losses in every category. 10 armored personnel carriers have been destroyed. That is largely the war's average so far. We also saw that 6 supply trucks were destroyed. Not an incredibly high number, but still fairly high and good to see. We also saw that 2 main battle tanks were lost. That's several below the war's average of around 5 per day, but it is still better than 0, which is what we saw yesterday. We also saw that 27 artillery pieces were destroyed, quite a nice number. And we also saw that 14 drones were destroyed, along with 1 plane, that was the Su-25 we saw being shot down in the northeast the other day, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. And so overall, the losses today were quite nice, and it does appear that the Ukrainians are certainly trying to up that game and trying to destroy even more Russian equipment as much as they can. And it appears that they're doing a pretty good job at that as well. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from our location unknowns, and we're now going to be moving on to that great wild front line of fighting from left, right, front, and center. And it's been a wild day on the front lines, especially in the southern front, because we've seen hundreds of Russians on film getting hit by artillery, and it appears that the artillery was inflicting some massive losses onto them. Before we get to that, though, I have to say this. Many of y'all have been asking us amazing questions in the live chat tonight. Loads of y'all have. And we've been looking at them and we've been seeing them. And we've also been running some leading questions. A lot of the questions y'all have been asking tonight, we have asked all of y'all to vote on what y'all are thinking of them. And it appears that thousands of y'all have voted on these questions. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's hop right into our first poll, which says Ukraine has begun training troops in preparation for a Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant attack. And what are your thoughts? 53% said Ukraine is taking reasonable precautions. 26% said Ukraine is acting fast and appropriately. 12% said Ukraine is overhyping the threat. And 9% said unsure. And on this one, we have heard U.S. officials say that the threat is being overblown. That is the official position of the U.S. Poland, however, is taking the opposite approach. They're saying that Ukraine has a valid reason to be concerned about this, and that is a real threat. So at this point, I'm not very clear exactly if the threat is real or not, but I guess it doesn't hurt to take precautions and go ahead and train folks how to respond in case it does melt down or blow up. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I'm going to go with the 53%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is a pretty serious issue. I've got to be quite honest. I think the United States is somewhat downplaying the seriousness of the issue at the ZMPP. I have a feeling that Poland and Ukraine are probably more so in the proper response that should be had to the ZMPP. Of course, it didn't blow up like the Ukrainians said it would on Sunday. It is now Thursday, and it hasn't blown up yet, thankfully. But it's still a very concerning situation that something like that can happen at this point. And I think it should be seriously thrown into question whether the Russians will keep the situation at the power plant stable or not, considering that they did blow up the Novokakhovka Dam. And I've seen many brand new nuclear physicists crawling out of the woodworks. I think there are more nuclear physicists on YouTube than there are in real life saying that the situation at the ZMPP is not serious any longer because the nuclear reactors have been shut down and they're just sitting there and nothing's happening. And that's untrue. That is completely untrue. a nuclear reactor, when it's turned off, it still requires largely almost the same amount of people to operate it as when it was online. There must be water being pumped through the cores. It must not be allowed to overheat. If it overheats, it goes into a meltdown. Even when the reactors are shut down, technically, that still has to happen. They still have to have water going through those cores for a significantly long time. And right now, that situation is getting worse. And the power plant officials that are there, compared to, the nuclear physicists that are all across YouTube right now, the nuclear scientists and nuclear operators at that power plant said when the Novakovka Dam was blown up, the ZMPP was already in a precarious state, and the water they had in the cooling pond most likely would not work. It would not be cool enough, or there would not be enough of it for it to sustain itself for a long enough time. And that was coming from the people who actually run the power plant. So regardless, and I have to say this because I've seen so many people wanting to try and terrace a new one over what they say about nuclear power plants and how it's not that big of an issue. I take the word of the people who actually run the nuclear power plant way over anyone else. Over the IAEA, over random experts on YouTube. I take their word over everything else. And considering that the ZMPP officials are saying that the situation is quite severe and the water inside the cooling pond may not sustain the power plant for too long, I would say that that is what we should be working off of, instead of working off of some random Joe Blow who nobody knows, who hops into a live chat and says, "You're a liar, it's not a serious problem," and I'm just quoting the CMPP officials for the large part. I would go with what they're saying versus anyone else. And I think the United States and the rest of the Western world should be operating off of what the CMPP officials are saying as well, instead of what the IAEA are saying and what people want to believe because it's more convenient for them. And going off of that, I would say that the United States should be treating the situation as seriously as Poland is as far as Western countries are going right now. And so I hope that addresses that, in my opinion, at least about the power plant and its current situation and what we've been hearing about it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next poll, I'm just grabbing a question out of the live chat real quick. Got that one. So moving on to our second one, it says, new reports allege that the Russian General Surovikin was a secret Wagner VIP member and Prigozhin ally. And what are your thoughts? 69%, nice, said his fate is sealed now. 13% said it changes nothing. 12% said unsure. And 7% said it seems like a minor detail. And that's certainly not a minor detail. Surovikin here was a secret member of the VIP Wagner group, and he's also a Russian general. That's a complete joke on Russia that they didn't catch that or know about it, and to see that coming from a mile away. If he is indeed a VIP member of Wagner, that explains a whole lot about why he was involved in helping plan the coup, if that's true as well. So I would say I'm with the 69%. Nice. But Enforcer, what say you?
I grant you, Surovikin, the title of VIP. What in the world does that get me? Well, they go to a premium hotel room at Wagner locations, and also you may get some of the cobalt and diamonds from our mines. I don't know.
Yes. And also, when you get caught later, it brings you death.
It brings you, and what happens if things go south? Instant death. It's immediate. You don't even feel it. It's just instant death. But I would say that is hilarious to know that the Russians just never caught on to that, or even questioned that for that matter, because, I would be very concerned if I was Putin and I just heard, "Hey, you want to hear something cool, Putin? Yeah, what is it? One of your generals has just made a VIP member of a mercenary organization." I would go, "What? And he accepted it? Yeah. Oh, he's removed now." That would have been me. If I was in Putin's position, I would have had that guy removed as soon as I heard about that. For some reason, he didn't do that. And no one really cared to know about it either. Well, then again, he was a secret VIP, so I guess he got the secret VIP treatment. And what the hell?
But how do you have a Russian military general? There shouldn't be any secrets that the government doesn't know about. Their intelligence services really screwed that up big time. And I'm not saying that Russians' intel services are competent. Clearly, this proves they're not. They're definitely not like the KGB used to be.
Apparently not. I mean, how in the world do you miss something that big? And also, where in the world do you get honored with this title? Where in the world do you go for the ceremony to become a VIP member? Or did that just magically happen through the mail or something?
Did they give him a card, like a laminated card with his face and everything on it?
Dude, it has Wagner Platinum on it. You whip that thing out whenever you're near the Wagner and go, "It's easy, guys, easy." And they look at it and they go, "Oh, Thank you, sir. I hope you have a great experience with Wagner. I mean, like, what in the world? I don't know what in the world a VIP.
It's literally like on GTA. You know how they have like the Merryweather mercenaries? They call them up on the phone. You're like a VIP member. You can call in an airstrike at will. It's like that.
Oh man, and speaking of that, getting out of the jokes that we're making on that because they're hilarious, but in all seriousness, I think Surovikin may have been the reason why the Wagner was not being completely starved of ammunition. Because when you think about it, remember, Matthew, that they were complaining in Bakhmut that the Russian government was pretty much cutting them off and they weren't getting ammunition from them, yet magically at some point other Russian units started to whine and complain that all of the ammunition that was going to them was ending up in Bakhmut for Wagner? I think that may have been wise because Surovikin was trying to make sure that he kept his platinum membership, and so he just started telling people to reroute the ammo supplies for other units to Wagner, although they weren't supposed to be getting any ammo.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what in the world was involved behind the scenes because, of course, we'll never really know. We're just trying to piece it together right now. But that would be my best guess, and I don't know how in the world the Russians didn't see that coming or didn't even know about that. And so with that, I hope that addresses that in my opinion, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll says Prigozhin has once again refused to sign contracts for Wagner to continue fighting. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 66% said Prigozhin is tempting fate, 20% said unsure, 10% said Prigozhin is going to disband Wagner, and 4% said Prigozhin is confused. And at this point, we're really not sure when this statement was made. It seems that Prigozhin and Putin have been negotiating. It's unclear if it's in person, because obviously we saw that photo earlier where he appeared to be getting on a helicopter from Moscow or St. Petersburg, wherever that was. So he might have gone back to Russia to negotiate, or he could be doing it through Lukashenko, and he's still in Belarus and in Minsk. We don't know. But for him to refuse to sign the contracts yet again after attempting that coup, he is begging to get killed, in my opinion. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say he is also begging to be killed as well. I would largely have to agree with Matthew on that one entirely. That's such a stupid premise to make, especially considering they said, my plan wasn't to overthrow the Russian government, and now he's going to sit there and he's going to make sure, no, I still want the Wagner to kind of be a rebel group, and by the way, screw the Russian government. It's like, yeah, you're pretty much keeping the coup alive at this point. He's dead. He's just living out his final days. He may as well have gotten radiation poisoning at this point because his death will be coming fairly soon. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we are fresh out of polls. So we're moving on to our Super Chat questions, and up first, we have a very generous $100 donation from Snow White. And thank you very much, Snow White, for that very generous support.
Seven
and
dwarfs?
Snow White said, just Snow White. I didn't see the dwarves coming with them. But
Oh,
anyway,
man.
Snow White said, hi, Enforcers, and do you think you will visit Ukraine once the soldiers are finished? There are some bobcats with their names on them. A visit by the LSA would be cool. Yes or no? I say yes.
I say yes. I say, why not, Bliat? That would be pretty cool to me. And also, let's see, once the soldiers are finished. Yes, I would say yes. It's really an easy answer, actually. I'm trying to make sure that there's a good answer to that. But really, the simple answer would be yes. I think we would probably end up going over there and checking the place out, talking to folks, meeting with people, because I think that would be incredibly cool. And so with that, thank you so much for the mass amount of support, Snow White, and helping this channel to keep on running. I know why the 7 dwarves aren't with you. It's because Dopey right now is somewhere in between St. Petersburg and Minsk trying to negotiate with the Russian government. But, you know, sometimes you just can't help what the dwarves do. You know what I mean? It's just unfortunate. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for the massive support, Snow White. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Duncan VR once again. He puts in a $30 donation, and thank you, Duncan, very much for the support. And if you are new around here, or if you're used to being around here, you know that the animal noises always follow when we call out one from Duncan. So thank you very much, Duncan, for the support. And here we go. He says, Bamuba, ba bliat, ba ba moo. Oh man, chat, if you're like hearing Matt saying animal noises, type ba moo ba. Now in the chat, meow. Man, he's heavy on the Babas tonight. Baba Pootler arrested. Oh my. He arrested his blow-up doll. Baba, well, bliat. Being a part of the coup. Oh man, I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you so much for the support.
Man, he put me through the ringer on that one. That one was tougher than usual.
Man, that one had some literal hurdles in it, like, having to go from Baba Moo Moo to oh man, and then right back to it. I mean, that was really an obstacle course right there. But thank you so much for the support, Duncan. Of course, always throwing in the animal noises into the super chats, and I got to thank you so much once again for doing such an iconic service for the LSA. I think everyone in the LSA at this point knows what that is. And thank you so much once again, Duncan, for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. Folks like you help us to eat. Yeah, help us to sleep. And I gotta thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Duncan, and Snow White so far, and everyone else who supported the channel so far, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep this thing going. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. Oh man, I'm telling you. And with that, we are on to the last one of this segment, and then we're going to be moving right into the Frontline news.
All right, and the last one of this segment goes to Marion Diemert, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Marion, as always, for always being very generous and supporting our work. And Marion says, it is a crazy war, and because Russia has lost its mind. And I'd have to agree with that 100%.
And I would have to also agree with that 100%. Russia has clearly lost its mind. It's going insane right now, and especially with the purge happening, it's going to be getting even more insane in Russia, without a doubt. There's going to be more incompetent people that are in positions of power inside the Russian Federation, and I have a feeling that's going to have disastrous results as far as the Russian nation goes, and also the Russian war in Ukraine goes. It'll be going quite poorly for them. And so, with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You have been around forever in helping this channel to keep on running, Marion. And I thank you so much for being in this live chat, watching this stream with us each and every night, and joining us as we keep this thing going. And of course, supporting this channel. It blows us away completely that folks appreciate this channel enough to support it, because it is just crazy to think that people actually have found this channel to be so worthwhile that y'all have supported it and y'all have helped us to keep this thing going. And I got to thank you so much once again to everyone who supports this channel, because y'all help us to keep this thing rolling, and y'all help us to be able to do this as a job so that we can continue on our work. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of that question segment. And thank you to all of y'all so much once again for the support. And we're now going to be moving on into our Frontline news before I move into the location unknowns, because usually we do that before the location unknowns. Tonight we did it after. But moving on into the front lines and covering the day's events in this area, over the past 24 hours, we have, of course, seen that there was no frontline movement, and there's a donut, but there was no frontline movement in the Northeast. We did see one clip here, however, of some Ukrainian SPGs on the move. These are two S3s and a Peon. And listen to those engines roar. All right, we're going to mute that. It sounds like FIFA's in town. And we can now see the 2S3 getting onto the muddy road. And also, take a look at that AK-74M, y'all. I mean, that thing's got the plum plastic and everything. I mean, that one actually looks pretty nice, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of beater AKs in this war. That one's not a bad-looking one. It looks almost like it's new. And we see them looking over the top of the SPG, and that's the end of the clip. But still, a little bit of activity in the Northeast. Not really much to talk about. And of course, the Russians are still attempting their offensive in the Kremenna direction, but we're seeing that that's really amounting to nothing. It appears that they're not making any real advances in that area. They are trying to push there, but the Ukrainians are holding them back very effectively, and so the Russians are making no ground in this area whatsoever. However, in Bakhmut, it's a little bit of a different story, as it seems over the past 24 hours, if we go back, and now we go forward, oh, buddy, oh, man, I'm telling you, they've been making ground everywhere. They made ground in Orkovo-Vasilivka, and they also made a decent swath of ground here, taking the tree line on the other side of the canal zone and pushing a little bit further to Klishkivka, pretty much removing the only meaningful Russian defensive position in between the Ukrainians and Klishkivka beyond this tree line here, which sits just above Klishkivka in the area of Bakhmut. And so let me take y'all there real quick while the map spasses out. Come on, map. You can do it. We'll refresh the map. Hopefully that'll help it. There we go.
The map's giving you no respect.
Oh man, I'm telling you. But we can see the little forested area right up here. And it is a forest. It looks like bushes, but these are actually little forests right there. And so the Ukrainians have taken this tree line here, and as you can see, there's really no good defensive positions in between this tree line and that one, except for these incredibly thin tree lines. And of course, considering that the Ukrainians control this tree line, they can move armor out into these fields to support their infantry as they fight their way down these tree lines and then on into the forests around Klishchiivka. And once they're in the forest around Klishchiivka and it becomes a fight of skill more so than a fight of strategy, the Ukrainians will once again wipe the floor there and most likely will be able to take the town of Klishchiivka here soon. But moving on into our video clips, we've had a load of them in this area, considering that there was a decent advance here today. Starting off with our first clip, in Ivanivsky, we heard from a Ukrainian commander that the Russians had been retreating in all areas, and it appears that they in fact were. Of course, you'll see that on the map update today. And so here is this Ukrainian commander's synopsis of the frontline situation. Yes, it's the south of Bakhmut. Indeed, there are still fierce battles there, but the armed forces of Ukraine are actually taking over the whole of Klishchiivka. This is a strategic point from which the offensive will begin directly in the south of Bakhmut. Also, in the north of Bakhmut, the 57th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is also receiving operational success. Today, we can say that the enemy is retreating from the northern streets of Bakhmut. The street of internationalist warriors, the enemy was completely removed from these positions, from these KSPs. So it looks like the Russian forces, understanding that the counteroffensive actions from the Ukrainian armed forces will be active, are retreating from Bakhmut. Which was so important for them, right? Well, not a little, not themselves. Artillery works hard, mortar systems work hard on our side, everything works to kill the enemy. Constantly, daily assault actions are carried out. If we talk about Klishchiivka, you said that it is a strategically important settlement. The soldiers are explained by the fact that it is located at the heights, and this will give the opportunity to inspect the territory further. If this settlement is officially liberated by the armed forces of Ukraine, will they go there? How much does this develop hands in the Ukrainian armed forces to further occupy this territory? Now we have 24/7 control. Everything that happens directly in Bakhmut from the air. Klishchiivka is a strategic height from which you can make an impression. From Klishchiivka, Bakhmut, in principle, is already visible as on the Dolan. The same is true of Berkivka from the north, for which there are fierce battles going on right now. If Berkivka and Klishchiivka are completely under control, these are two strategic heights from the north and south of Bakhmut. Bakhmut can be taken in the operational encirclement. Bakhmut will be viewed and shot at 100%. And according to that commander in the Bakhmut area, they are making advances in the exact areas they need, and laid out that Berkivka and Klishchiivka are both on heights, and they are, actually, that is true. Klishchiivka sits right on the ridge in this area, the ridge being right behind the village, that can overlook right into the southern road leading into Klishchiivka near Opitne, and also Berkivka, similarly the same. It is also on a ridge that overlooks into Bakhmut and Krasnohora, so it can cut off Russian reinforcements to the town completely, and also gives them dominating positions to continue the push around the town. From Klishchiivka, they can push towards Andriivka and also Opitne to the direct south of Bakhmut, and from there to Zaitsevo, which is on the only remaining height to the southeast of Bakhmut before you enter the open plain that reaches all the way to Popasna. Also in the northern area of Bakhmut, there are no heights beyond the one in Berkivka. There is, of course, the chicken tender, seen right here. That is the chicken tender, as famously known during the battle. But there are no heights in the area around Soledar, Bakhmutske, or Pokrovsk. This is an open plain. So once you take this ridge here, you can get a pretty good overview into the entirety of the area and be able to fire onto Russians wherever you want with artillery, tanks, infantry, whatever you wish. It'll be able to hit that entire area. And so the Ukrainians will once again have a very dominant position over the battlefield and will largely be able to completely control the battle and how it progresses on the flanks from those points. Moving on from that and down into the southern flank again, we saw Russian positions in the Opitne area being shelled here in this clip. And man, we got that 50s Shabubi music going on here. And we can see the Russians wandering around the streets.
They must feel right at home in this trash pile that's turned into right here.
Man, these guys are sitting there going, man, this feels just like Krasnodar, blia. It feels just like my home. And we can see them wandering into the rubble of this one house here. Oh, and the shell landed. The eagle has landed. The second eagle has landed. They were getting hammered. Not with
I
vodka.
think the Eagle just took flight.
I think it did. Smoke still coming off the remains of the building. Third shell hits. And that's the end of the clip. But still, wonderful. Wonderful. And more Russians being knocked out, the easier it will be for Ukraine to retake this village. Moving on into our next clip, we also saw the Fighting 93rd, the famous Fighting 93rd, shot down 5 Russian drones today with a Strela. Here's the clip.
Damn. That noise
Man.
always gets me.
Dang, dude, look at that. That thing was right over him. Well, we know that
Wow.
that one was certainly shot down. And here comes number 2. There's number 2. Dang, these things are flying right over the Strela. Let's see,
And
here's
that
number...
high-pitched whine that happens right before it takes off, that's the gyroscope, right?
I believe that's the little missiles. I think it's an IR eyeball, an IR optic on it, spooling up. I'm not really sure what that sound is. If anyone really knows what that is, let us know in the live chat. Because from what I've understood and what's been explained to me, the sound that that thing makes before it fires is actually the missile, something on the missile spooling up. But I don't really know that for certain. But we can now see the 3rd missile being fired. Well, actually, the 4th missile being fired and shooting down that drone. And we can now see the 5th missile being fired and shooting down that drone as well. And now we can see the epic outro of the 93rd right there. Really cool. Famous at this point. And man, wouldn't you want to have those blades, Matthew? Look at those. Man,
Those are nice.
Those things are like freaking K-bars, man. Jeez. Like, they're huge.
It's like almost like a kitchen knife, like a butcher knife or something.
Kind of does. I'm not going to lie. And so that's the end of that clip. Amazing to see them shoot down so many drones, and also hilarious to see the Russians didn't see the Strela right under the drone. Moving on from that clip and on into the next one, we also saw that a Polish BMP in the area was hit directly on its engine bay by an 82mm mortar round. To show y'all exactly where this hit on the BMP, since y'all won't see that well in the video. And look, it's a picture of War Thunder, the free-to-play online mobile game. But we'll use this picture because it's pretty good graphics and it shows exactly what I'm looking for. The 82mm mortar shell that we're about to see hit about right there on the engine bay, about right in the spot where you see these little ribs over the engine bay hood. And it appears it caused absolutely no damage to what was paper-thin armor to the BMP. And so here's the picture, more so the clip. And we can see the hit of the 82mm mortar. We can see that it did dent the engine bay hood. We can see that there's a concave area where it hit. But beyond that, it didn't really cause all that much damage. In fact, it was almost a skimming hit that didn't do anything to the BMP.
Ну да. Та чим воно попало?
Also, you can see a little bit of what I would call splatter from the 82mm shrapnel that hit the BMP, and it took small chunks out of the armor, but nothing that would actually compromise it.
Непогано так прогнуло алюміній. Порепався, да? Офігеть.
Very lucky for this crew that apparently the paper-thin armor of a BMP, which can't stand up, by the way, just for y'all to know how thin this is, it can't stand up to 50 caliber ammunition. If a 50 cal was to hit this thing anywhere, it would punch clean through the BMP. But apparently it is strong enough to resist an 82mm mortar round. So pretty wild and pretty weird to know that apparently the power, well, then again, I know why, it's a ballistics thing. The 50 caliber has a lot of velocity behind it. It's smaller, and therefore it can cut through things like butter just because of its velocity and its size. While the 82mm mortar travels a lot slower, it's subsonic, and also it has a lot of high explosive filler in it. It explodes pretty much on contact. It doesn't pierce anything. It just blows up on it. So that's why. But, still pretty wild to see that in practice. Moving on from that, however, and into our next clip, we're about to be getting into some serious frontline footage. Starting off with the 3rd Brigade, of course, putting out their daily video showing their activities on the line. And from what we can tell, this is actually the video of them taking this tree line that you can see right here on the map. Right in this area, this is the video of them fighting inside of that tree line today that they took.
Пидоры, это вам, сука, за пацанов! За Моргана, за Лысого, сука, за Меха и за обжору, блядь!
We hear that Ukraine... After going on a cussing battle to the Russians, they then began to fire at him. Man, this guy is getting into it. We can see him getting a grenade lobbed at him. So that way he can lob it at someone else. Sorry, that sounded bad.
Окей, аккуратно тут кидай.
You can see the soldier running over with a Bakelite. Oh, and we see the grenade exploding in that dugout. We can now see them having to handle the little paper bags that the ammo comes in and load it. We can now see them firing into the tree line again.
А, сука, горячая.
You can see the soldier firing. We can also see that this guy, before the video started, was firing his AK so much, we can see the plastic foregrip is beginning to smoke from the heat of the barrel.
Ой-ой-ой. Сука.
If you fire these AKs enough, believe it or not, that little plastic foregrip on the front of it will eventually melt off. So that's something to keep in mind. We now see him moving down this little waist-high trench. It's hardly wide enough for a single person. And we see him meeting up with other Ukrainian soldiers here.
Контроль 12!
We now see them moving into another trench. And we hear the firefight beginning in front of them.
I saw Cuban Punisher say in the live chat, these guys are just wasting ammo. I think the objective here is just simply to lay down fire, and they're not necessarily aiming at particular people, I don't think.
No, a lot of people are under the misunderstanding, a lot of people who don't know how firefights actually work, that every shot you fire is supposed to be hitting someone. That's not the case. A lot of the shots fired in a firefight are suppressive fire. They're not really meant to hit anyone. You don't even really know where these people are. You're just shooting in their general direction, so that way the bullets whiz over their head, and by reflex, people flinch and they keep their heads down whenever they're under suppressive fire. It is unnatural, actually, even if you are well trained, to try and stand up as bullets are whizzing over your head. If you want to see a little bit more about that, go and watch a video on Grand Thumb's channel where they hid behind a berm and have people fire over their heads, and then you can see that everyone in the video, even Grand Thumb, who was in the Airborne in the U.S. Army, they ended up having a natural reflex to where they would almost slam their heads down into the ground because the sound and also the feeling, because there's a little bit of touch, well, not really touch, but that's the best way to explain it, involved whenever a bullet flies over your head. You can actually kind of feel it whiz over your head. That will keep your head down. So they're not really trying, like right now, like with this guy moving around this corner, he's not trying to shoot a Russian. What he's doing right here is he's firing these rounds so that way this guy will hear the gun firing at him, which is a lot louder when you're in front of it at this range, and also the snapping of the bullets flying through the air in front of him and hitting the trench wall will most likely freak this Russian out that may be in this dugout in front of him, and it allows this guy to pretty much round the corner, firing the rifle, get this guy in his sights, shoot him, and then move on. We don't even know if there's a Russian in that dugout, but that's the theory behind this kind of shooting. We now see him firing into the dugout and throwing a grenade in there. We now see them firing in there again.
Окоп справа тут, зачистили нет? Не, узнай, узнай.
We see him lobbing some nades. We now see this Ukrainian soldier firing further down the tree line as the squad is behind him. And we see them moving down the trench line. And the video clip largely ends there, but of course you can see that they took the trench line, and a huge credit to the 3rd Brigade, which is continuing to fight in that area and continuing to push the Russian soldiers out. moving on to our next clip, we also saw the 3rd Brigade hitting Russian trenches with their drone forces a little bit further down the way. We'll have to mute this, but for some reason these Russians dug the trenches in the open fields leading up to Klishchiivka, which will make these non-reinforceable. The guys that are in there right now, if the Ukrainians continue to just light up these fields leading up to Klishchiivka, there will be no way to reinforce these guys, and they'll be practically left there either until they surrender or until they're wiped out. We can see them dropping another bomblet near this dugout.
Also, boxes of dirt.
Also, Elmer, I think what you saw in that trench a little while ago was most likely some kind of a combat gear. It appeared to be some combat gear that was laying around. I think a Russian ended up depositing that in the trench and leaving it behind. So that's what you saw. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of that combat footage from the 3rd Brigade. Great to see that they're continuing to make gains in that area, and hopefully we'll be pushing into Klishchiivka soon. And moving a little bit behind the lines, we got to hear the story of a Russian soldier that explained the kind of meat grinder that they had been put into in Bakhmut after he had been captured. He decided to tell the story. And so here's the clip. To the Kaliningrad Regiment, 1486. Without passing almost no training, we were thrown here under the Bakhmut. Now we are not far from the Yagodny. 2nd day. Artillery, panes, drones are constantly working. Supply what only that they gave the machine gun. 4 horns that the bull was left here. They found it themselves. This is with us, mobilized. Throw us like cannon fodder. A lot of guys come back from the reservoir. They are also thrown there. Say distract artillery like cannon fodder. The command does not understand what is happening. Or they do and they don't care. No one knows anything. Just go there, I don't know where. Just under the bullet. Here the guys stood. Musicians. It was calmer with them. They know their business. We have no communication. There are our parents who bought these bullfang things. Wait, hang on. Is he talking about a Baofeng radio? I think
Probably
that's supposed
so.
to be a Baofeng radio. Man, you whip out the Baofeng radio and you hear being chilly. It's like, uh-oh, this is a cheap quality radio. Anyways, which are generally useless and listen, no hidden communication either. People in communication with the command cannot come out, and if they come out through someone, then they are told to stay here until the end. Just a Scott relationship. Musicians helped a lot. That's the Bakhmut, by the way. Well, that's the Wagner, by the way, before they left. And I think now they are ready to come back. No, they're not. And we need to come to our aid. Ensure some kind of security. Just we will die here now and give up all positions that, with such hard work, were given to the guys just in a matter of seconds. Hours. Days. And that's the end of the clip. It was somewhat incoherent, but that's at least the story of that soldier. And so we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news of being thrown into a meat grinder, and we're now going to be moving on down to Avdiivka, where we've seen that the Ukrainian forces were able to destroy a Russian command post a little behind the lines in this area today. Observe as this command post disintegrates before our eyes. It is a magic trick. Look, there's the command post. They are telling soldiers where to go, and now the soldiers are watching them go places, but nowhere good. And so we can now see the rest of the artillery landing in the area of the command post.
Damn, that building blew up like a stop-motion animation.
Man, that thing blew up like a house that had a meth lab in it. That thing just went going.
A Walter White type beat.
Say my name.
Yeah.
Matthew, wait a minute, hang on, Matthew. This is the best thing to say about this house. Say my name. Ivan Vladirovich 200. That's what they're saying with their name. But anyways, let's go back to the beginning here and let's watch that command post get blown up again, because that was one hell of a shot. Man, that thing just tore apart.
It really did. It's like
Or-
it's made of paper.
Or as they say in the olden times, it tore asunder. Anyways, moving on from that clip and to the Ukrainian side, we also saw Ukrainian Panzer Morse firing in this area. Also, I have to mute it because they have that boom, 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 boom music playing. But we can see them fire the Panzer Morse. Really neat. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Panzer Morse firing, and that's all the news we have from Avdiivka today. And covering the past 24 hours there, as far as frontline developments go, we haven't seen any here. It appears that the Russians have been stopped, the Ukrainians have been stopped, everyone's been stopped in this area, and they're just in a stalemate at the moment as of today. But moving on to Donetsk, we have seen that the Ukrainians have taken the initiative and have started to hit and destroy Russian bases inside of Donetsk city. Here's the clip. Oh man, they got that Chad music playing extraordinaire. And we see the artillery flushing this place out. Just recently, there was an arrival here. In short, the boys are still lying under the rubble. That's effed up in short. Man, the kid named effed up who just bought some shorts. Oh, gee, thanks for noticing. It's still burning, damn. We now see this guy walking up into the rubble. You see him looking around. Here was the arrival. Talking about it like a DHL package. That's what arrivals happen. Alright, well thank you for sharing that. Arrivals do in fact happen, and they happen really quickly with tonight's sponsor. I'm just kidding, we don't have a sponsor or anything. But anyways, moving on from that clip, we could of course see the Ukrainians did a pretty good job at hitting a Russian base in the city of Donetsk, and that's all we saw there. We did not see the Ukrainians further advancing in this area. It appears that they have been stopped just south of Staromikhaylovka, and we haven't heard much from there since then. Moving on out of that area and down into the south, over the past 24 hours, we have seen that the Ukrainians have actually, they appear, one second, let me make sure we're looking at this right. They have actually pushed forward. I had to make sure because the map didn't update until we were live on air, but we can see that the Russians are being pushed back. Deep State is also updating the claimed areas of land, which are in green. The newly claimed areas are always in blue, and we can even see that down here the Ukrainians have been able to take about an entire field, and the Russians have been pushed back. Of course, they have not shown on Deep State that the Ukrainians have taken control of Robotyne, which they have at this moment, but for some reason they're still not showing that on this map. They are showing it on the live UA map, however. The clips we got from Velika and Novosilka are varied, but do show the daily actions of the Ukrainian forces over the past 24 hours, including a Leopard 2 undergoing a cold start.
Well, it should be good.
Man.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Listen to that engine roar.
That's nice. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Damn, son, where'd you find this? But moving on from that, an amazing cold start. Moving on behind the lines, we saw some Russian reinforcements being obliterated. Now, this is what we were talking about in the title about Russian heavy losses. These are it. So, let's see if there's any music here. I have a feeling there is. Yep, there it is. We can see the little Russian reinforcement coming up here. It appears to be maybe a platoon or a company. You see them on the move. And we now see the Ukrainian artillery coming down on top of them. The first round landing towards the front of the column. And now it appears that they are running through the field. And a large amount of them were taken out before they even made it to the tree line. It appears that half of them were wiped out in the field. So we can now see the artillery coming down on Russian positions in the tree line, wiping out the rest of the Russian forces, and knocking out the remainder of that one platoon. And the Russians are being slammed, hammered, and wham-bammed on home. We can now see...
What in the hell?
We can now see a copy pasta pop up on screen for a moment. Unfortunately, we can't read it.
A lot of questions included in it.
Oh.
Oh dear.
Is
Oh
that
my.
the Grim Reaper? But anyways, it appears the Russians were wiped out. At least these reinforcements were wiped out in that field, and that means that the Russians will be having a far harder time in Staromayorsk. Speaking of Staromayorsk, we also saw the Ukrainians clearing out Russians in positions around Staromayorsk in this clip. We can see the Russians hopping in the trenches, running down the length of them, like some kind of a scalded dog, and running into a dugout where safety can be felt. But then he runs right back out of it and right down the dugout again, going 1,000,000 miles an hour.
This guy's running out of pure hysteria.
Man, that guy be running like Drake runs. Drake, the kind of fellow to run a little funny. But you can see.
He's running like the bad guy of Scooby-Doo when they get caught.
Man, you know what he's running like? He's running like he's about to put up his hands in front of him and go, you know, that's what he looks like he's running like. But we can now see the Ukrainians, of course, dialing in the artillery to this Russian force's position. And there goes the bomblet. Right on the dugout.
Did you see that crap fly across the screen right as it hit?
Yeah, that
It was
the
like something
drone.
going sideways in the air.
Yeah, that was the drone dropping the bomb. It was like a bomber, pretty much. It just never stopped flying. It just flew right over, dropped it, and kept on going.
Go back and let's see that again real quick.
Man, Matthew's asking me to reread the line. Look at that. Is it that thing right there? Yeah, that's the drone. And we
Wait a
see
minute. There's another thing that goes flying across the screen here in a second. It goes from left to right.
Yeah, that's
Was that another
drone.
drone?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, man. There's drones everywhere around
Dude,
here.
this place is swarming with drones, man. It's like a freaking bee hive is attacking this trench. But still, great to see. They got that thing right on the mark. It was a running jump, and that thing fell right into the outpost. But moving on from that clip and on into our next one in the fields near Volodne, we also saw the Ukrainians were able to destroy a a Buk surface-to-air missile system. We're going to have to mute that. And we can see that it's going to be done with a Panzerhaubitze 2000. Look at it. It's beautiful. Man, you know, cleaning the barrel on a Panzerhaubitze 2000 must be a freaking nightmare. You know, with the diameter of it and everything. I wonder what kind of bore cleaner you have to have for that. Oh, and there goes the Buk. Like a firework. I was actually looking down here towards the crosshairs, but that is enough to make a Russian commander puke right there. I was watching a Buk get lost. And look at that thing burn.
Colin Barrett said, Buk got rebuked. LOL. That was a good one.
That's a good one. I like that. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that low clip and on into one of our last ones, where we saw a Ukrainian helicopter low-riding and firing off its rockets. And also, I gotta mute what you know about rolling, because, you know, that's copyrighted. Anyways, we can see the helicopter flying up, tilting up, and firing off its rockets literally on the ground nearly. We can see it
that was
popping
kind of sketchy, for real.
We can see the next one doing that as well. Dude, these things almost look like they're drifting into the shots. You know, like, look at this. Like the second...
Man, that first one right there, I could have sworn he was about to hit the tail on the ground.
I mean, almost, man. Let's watch that again.
The second one did all right, but this guy right here was close.
Man, he was. That was about to be a tail strike right there. The second guy, though, for some reason, he came in at like 200 miles an hour. Look at this. That guy is going 100 miles an hour. Now we can see him turning off as well, and they're both getting out of there. But man, these guys have mastered low altitude flying. I mean, hell, this isn't even really flying anymore. This is more like low altitude driving. And there they go. And that's the end of the clip. But it was really cool, and I had to show it to y'all because it was just really neat. Moving on out of that area, Velika Novosilka, and on down towards the Roboltny Bulge, we saw that Ukrainian special units were in action in this area today. This unit is called Bravo Team, and I gotta say, bravo to their actions of clearing out the Russians today.
Menacing.
The Russians are once again resorting to dropping base boost on the Ukrainians. And you see the Ukrainians advancing through the trenches here.
Контроль-то просто, блядь. Граната!
See the guy lobbing a nade in front of him further down the trench. Well, you hear some bass boost being used once more.
Отход! Раненый! Раненый! 300, у нас 300! Отводь, отводь, отводь!
We see a Ukrainian soldier coming back
Взорвалось, блядь, не знаешь.
and moving behind the line. He may have possibly been hurt.
Підар! Він під накриттям! Під накриттям! Гранату кинь, бо зразу кине! Давай гранати! Гранати в рюкзаку, там дохуїще!
You see the Ukrainian squad moving back but continuing to engage the Russians. And also we'll be skipping past that part, and a little bit further ahead. We see the Ukrainians still firing over the berm, and the Russian forces continuing on the fight, lobbing a nade at them. And we can now see an aerial drone footage of the firefight unfolding. We can see what appears to possibly be a Russian soldier right there, but we can't really tell. We can also see the Russian dugout that they are most likely firing from right here as well. Just about 40 yards in front of them.
Чітко?
Дальше киньте гранату, дальше.
На, ти хтось один кидайся, блядь. Шустер, на. Дальше, ёбна, я буду...
Контроль, мужики, постоянно контроль.
We now see this Ukrainian soldier moving over to the other one, continuing to yell out orders and also information.
Контроль!
We now see the drone footage of those soldiers down there in that trench as one of them gets up over the berm and then advances into the next trench. That's the end of that clip right there, but once again showing the Bravo team continuing the push in the Roboltne area. Moving on to our next clip, we also saw the Russians filming one of their own T-54s in use. T-54s are quite old. The first ones were introduced into Soviet service in 1947, and here is a picture of a T-54. Wow, look at that. Power,
Wow.
Russia, strength, tech.
Nice.
You know, Matthew, what I'm thinking when I'm looking at this picture here? I'm thinking of that guy who does the cologne reviews that goes, power, strength, and then he sprays on the most mid-crap ever.
Yeah.
This is that. This is that, but the Soviet the Russian version of that now. And they're sending in loads of these things. We've seen videos even today from, I believe, Krasnodar. And I believe this is actually the one right here. And they're moving these things in the droves. And we can see one of them in use right here. It's the very tank that their grandfathers most likely used in the Soviet army.
Damn. All right.
And y'all can see right here that this thing be so old that you have to actually have a loader in the tank for the gun to fire. It's not even modern enough that the Soviets had made it to this point to the auto loader, which was around the 1960s. It is so old it doesn't have an auto loader. You have to fire this thing and then take the entire casing of the propellant and then throw it out the top hatch. So to even really use this tank, a hatch has to be open. We can also see this guy hit his head right there and go, boof!
You know that hurt. He's trying to play it off.
Yeah.
I paid attention that time.
Готов. Кирилл, и пусть потом подписчики не пиздят, что это фейк, блядь.
Like he's trying to sneak a look at it to see what he banged his head on.
Uh-huh. And that's the end of the clip, but I gotta say, y'all, this T-54 being in service with the Russians, that's we gotta go back and look at that again. 1 second, everyone. So there he goes, lobbing the shell out of the turret. What the hell is that noise? It sounded like the Roblox noise when someone gets hit in Roblox. They go, oof. All right. Well, as you see, the T-54 has some issues, but they're still trying to iron that out around 80 years later. But you see the Russians are in bad shape in Rabone. They're in far worse shape near Pyatikhatsky. As we saw that the Ukrainians captured a trench today, and inside of it weren't AKs. There were Mosins in this trench, not even with scopes. They were just like the surplus Mosins that you can find at any gun store in America for like $400 now.
Бесславные ублюдки напиздили ружья, нахуй. Группа,
Man!
блядь. Вин Дизеля, блядь.
Russians down here in Zaporizhia like it's the freaking 1950s, man.
Ну,
Good lord.
штурмовики, ебать его рот.
It's bad. It's bad. It's getting really bad for the Russians at this point. But moving on to our last clip in the Southern Front, we also saw the Ukrainians hitting a retreating company of Russians in this clip here. Check this out, guys. It's a whole company of them. Also, we got to mute the Chad music, but there's the entire company of them running across the field and now becoming the target of Ukrainian artillery. But you can also see that they move like one of those flocks of birds, you know, when they fly away from a telephone pole and then they go right and then they go left and then they go left again. Like, look at this. They're all running that way, and then the artillery hits from them, and they just go right, and then they all turn right and start running that way, and then another shell hits behind them, get down! And then we can see a Russian tank also being hit with an ATGM. We can now see Estrella being hit by a kamikaze drone. And we can see a T-72B being knocked out. We can also see some artillery landing near these Russians, most likely a drone bomblet. An FPV drone hitting a Russian position. Wow. Firepower. Wow. And we can see some yellow smoke coming out. We now see another FPV drone hitting another armored vehicle. We now see drone hitting observation tower quite effectively, mind you. Look at that.
That's quite clever work they're doing there.
Very clever and very good. And we can now see the bottom list say something about victory, and I'm sure that that'll help them to victory. That's the end of the clip, but showing a little bit of the actions happening around the area of Lipkove and Pyatikhatsky. Moving on out of that news, we are now going to be moving on to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 491st day of the war. Here's the speech. Speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Закінчую день в Верховній Раді. Зустріч з нашим спікером Русланом Стефанчуком. Працюємо. А тепер звіт за цей день, насичений день, дуже довгий. В засіданні Європейської Ради вже традиційно для України бути серед членів Євросоюзу. Порядок денний, очевидний наш захист. В цій війні наш шлях до перемоги, підтримка від наших партнерів, наша безпекова підтримка для них, для всієї нашої Європи. Україна впливає на силу Європи, це факт, і цьогоріч настав час на основі цього та інших подібних фактів посилити єдність в Європі. Зокрема, початком переговорів про членство України в Євросоюзі. Зустріч із Майком Пенсом, 48-м віце-президентом США, сенатором. Американська підтримка для України життєво важлива від усіх американців, кожної американської родини, усіх громадських сил США, усіх політичних лідерів Конгресу, обох партій. Звичайно, від президента США Байдена. Дякую за цю підтримку. Обговорив з паном Пенсом нашу оборону, нашу взаємодію від самого початку, з перших днів між українськими і американськими народами. Говорили про зброю, про можливості наших воїнів, про наші спільні цінності. Зустріч з членами міжнародної робочої групи щодо екологічних наслідків війни. Грета Тунберг, Маргот Вальстрем та інші говорили передусім про російський теракт та екоцид на Каховській ГЕС, загалом про роботу нашої групи, яка буде займатися саме тими питаннями, які прямо пов'язані з руйнівним впливом російської агресії на природу. Протидія екоциду – це один із пунктів української формули миру. Ми маємо реалізувати кожен її пункт, всі аспекти миру. Розмова з президентом Гватемали, формула миру, наша співпраця з Латинською Америкою, допомога нам в розмінуванні, дуже важлива в створенні трибуналу щодо російської агресії. Зустріч з представниками нашого бізнесу дуже важлива, дуже змістовна. Я їм вдячний. Обговорили те, як стимулювати економічну активність зараз в умовах війни. Говорили про те, як дати більше захисту бізнесу, більше взаємодії державі та бізнесу. Зараз перший пріоритет – це оборона, і це очевидно, але й економіка теж важлива. Я вдячний усім, хто працює заради України, українців, хто зберігає та створює нові робочі місця, хто сплачує податки і хто вже готується до нашого відновлення, до масштабної програми трансформації України, яку ми реалізуємо обов'язково після нашої перемоги. Звичайно, наші воїни, наш захист сьогодні у зверненні до спільноти Chatham House – це один із провідних світових британських інтелектуальних центрів. Я розказав про те, що підготовлені ще 3 нові укази, дуже важливі, про нагородження наших воїнів. 419 воїнів загалом за час повномасштабної війни державними нагородами вже відзначені більше 49 тисяч українців і українок. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто захищає нашу державу. Дякую всім, хто зараз в бою, хто сьогодні теж дав нам найкращу новину про просування вперед українських позицій. Слава вам, наші герої. Дякую всім в світі, хто нам реально допомагає. Слава Україні!
And with that,
Героям слава.
and Slava Ukraini. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that is the beginning of many questions that many of y'all have answered, and we need to hear. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and jumping right back into our polls, our very first one says, the Pentagon stated that it does not plan to provide ATACMS to Ukraine and refutes reports, and what are your thoughts? It looks like 50% said they will change their minds again. 28% said they are lying and we are sending them. 12% said unsure, and 9% said we likely won't send ATACMS. And I saw a few folks in the chat pointing out the fact that we have actually budgeted for sending ATACMS to Ukraine in next year's budget. So with that being said, I will say that the Pentagon is probably lying. I know that's a strong word to use there, but they're probably lying about that. Covering up the fact that we're in the process of sending them right now. We've done that with a lot of other equipment in the past, and this is probably no exception. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm not going to lie, I don't really believe the Pentagon either. I believe they're probably either going to change their mind or they're already most likely sending them right now. Considering that they've done this on many other things, we have no reason to really believe anything the Department of Defense says as far as support goes. Really, as far as anything goes, hell, they've just come out with random numbers of Ukrainian deaths on a daily basis. One day it's 100,000 dead for Ukraine, the other day it's 40,000 dead for Ukraine, and then the day after that's 400,000 dead for Ukraine. So, you know, honestly, I wouldn't really believe much that comes out of the Department of Defense, even as far as their support to Ukraine goes, at least publicly. So I would just really wait and see if the Ukrainians start to use ATACMS, or if things start to get hit 190 miles behind the lines. Then I would say, well, they clearly lied. And so with that, hope that does address that in my opinion, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second poll says the U.S. is allegedly considering to provide controversial cluster munitions to Ukraine, and what are your thoughts? 64% said we should send them, there's no harm in it. 15% said we should not send those, that's not good. 12% said I need more info to know, and 9% said unsure. And from my research I did earlier, it appears that the U.S. is not a part of the treaty which bans cluster munitions. So it's not against the law or breaking any provisions that we've entered into. So legally speaking, it would be okay. But morally speaking, that's another story. In my opinion, I think it's okay to send them because, to my knowledge, Russia is also using them, and I believe in playing on an equal playing field. But Enforcer, what say you?
I say cluster the hell out of them. The Russians have been using cluster bombs on the Ukrainians for a good while now. The Ukrainians have not. And so if the Russians want to play dirty, it's not really dirty. None of the parties involved, the United States, Ukraine, or Russia, have signed any binding agreement that stops them from using cluster bombs in war. And also, by the way, what's controversial about cluster bombs isn't the fact that it is a cluster bomb. It's the fact that the cluster bomb leaves behind small bomblets all over the place, and some of them may not end up blowing up once the cluster bomb goes off. So it's possible that these bombs could sit around for years and then someone just is on a walk one day, they accidentally step on one of these things, and then it blows up under their feet and it kills them. That's why cluster bombs are kind of a moral issue out there in the world. But in my opinion, considering the Russians have been using them, so that's already going to be a problem for Ukraine going here forward, I would say it's fine to send them. I think we should send them to Ukraine, and hopefully they would be able to get some Russians fairly efficiently with the cluster bombs. And so with that, hope that does address that in my opinion, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll says, today the EU agreed to security guarantees to help Ukraine fight the war against Russia, and what are your thoughts? 66% said that works until they're in NATO, 16% said it's good but not major, 10% said that's pretty much pointless and dumb, and 8% said unsure. And it's definitely a good thing that they made official guarantees, but it was kind of already understood that they were going to help them anyway, so they basically just made it official. So I'm with the 16%. It's good, but nothing major or really groundbreaking. Basically, they just continued to say that they're going to provide financial support to fund the war, basically, for Ukraine's favor. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I think it's great. It won't really change anything. But it's always good to know that Europe is on their side. I don't think anyone was questioning whether they were or weren't, but still good to know nonetheless. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next poll, our last poll, says NATO's Stoltenberg is set to remain NATO's chief for another year and scraps retirement. And what are your thoughts? 61% said good, Stoltenberg is essential. 17% said I'm indifferent to it. 14% said unsure. And 8% said bad, NATO needed new leadership. And personally, to me, I haven't seen anything that Stoltenberg has done that's been a bad thing or he's been bad at his job. It seems like he's done pretty good. Nothing really super memorable that he's done, but he's done a good job in my opinion. So I would say I'm indifferent to it. I wouldn't say that he's essential to the operation, but then again, considering the fact that he's already there and very familiar with the situation, it probably is a good thing to keep him there so that way everybody's familiar with the person who's working that spot. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I haven't seen Stoltenberg do anything bad either, so I would consider him to be A-okay. So why not have him around for a little bit longer? And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll. So we're moving back into our Super Chat questions, and up first, we have a very generous $25 Super Chat from none other than Mark, Incompetent Drone Operator. And thank you, Mark, for that support. He says, that 80mm mortar that hit the hood of the Polish BMP, could it be that it lost flight trajectory, so did not land onto the nose/fuse? And sorry, started late.
And that's perfectly fine, but welcome in, Mark. A little late. But to answer that, probably not the case. The mortar must hit on its head, on the actual nose cone, I guess you could say, of the mortar shell, for it to actually explode. So that was a direct hit, where the mortar came straight down on top of the BMP and hit it. And also due to the arc of fire, there isn't really a chance for a mortar to ricochet off of anything. The shell almost comes straight down, almost at like a 80-degree angle or a 70-degree angle onto what it's trying to hit. So they probably hit directly onto the hood of that BMP and then exploded just like that, and the damage was quite minimal. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, but thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 Super Chat from none other than Charlie Nickel. And thank you very much, Charlie, for the support, and it's good to see you once again. He says, is there a chance that Prigozhin's troll farm, or similar, is responsible for the internet downage in Russia? And maybe you cover this, and if so, I will give myself a live chat timeout.
And thank you so much for the support. We actually did already address that, I believe, about the internet outages in Russia. And I would have to answer that since I think you weren't around for that. To re-answer that, I would say they're certainly responsible for it because the group that outed the internet said that they were affiliated with the Wagner. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And also, Matthew, did he want a live chat?
No, he said you could give him a live chat timeout if he was wrong.
What? No, you're not gonna time. No, we're not timing anyone out. I mean, people are wrong on all kinds of things. Every once in a while, we have to correct something that we put on air because it isn't correct. I don't believe in punishing people for getting things wrong here and there. Now,
he was joking anyway.
Oh,
he was just joking.
I thought he was being serious. I was like, no, we're not doing that, man. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next Super Chat goes to George A., who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, George, for that support. And he says, enforcers and LSA are among Ukraine's bravest sons. And that's very high praise. Thank you very much for that.
And that's very high praise. I got to thank you so much for the high praise. We rarely ever get praise that high. And I got to thank you so much as well for appreciating what we do enough to support us, to help us to keep doing it. Because, you know, y'all make it possible. You know, of course, we would do this regardless whether people support us or not. And, you know, we'll keep on doing it regardless whether the support be massive for this channel or not. But I got to thank you so much once again for appreciating this channel enough to support us, to help us keep doing it. Because a lot of y'all give high praise to us and say that we're doing amazing things. And we've got to thank everyone who supports us and helps us to be able to keep doing this work and help us to live off of this and do it as a job. We got to thank y'all for making that possible, because if we weren't able to survive behind the scenes to be able to do this, we wouldn't have been able to do everything we've done so far with the fundraisers and everything else. And I've got to thank you so much for the high praise and also the support to help this channel to keep on running, because that support does help us to do what we do. And thank you so much once again for the very kind words as well. That's actually really flattering, to be honest with you. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And our next super chat goes to Heather Fitzgibbon, LSA, longtime channel viewer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Heather, very much as always for that support. And Heather says, thank you, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, for a great stream, night after night. And take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for enjoying these streams night after night. It means a lot to us that people enjoy them. And I say that a lot, but it really does mean a lot to us, because we wouldn't feel as happy doing them if people were just kind of indifferent about the streams. And I'm so happy to know that so many people do end up enjoying them. And so thank you so much once again for the kind words. And we will make sure to grab a live chat. And so with that, we are on to the live chat.
All right, and the live chat question goes to Timothy Walker, who says, what is the American equivalent to the Aleutian 22M?
The American equivalent, I believe, would be an Orion aircraft. Let me see if I can find this thing. Yeah, the Lockheed P-3 Orion. You can actually see it's almost the same size and everything. This one's actually a part of the Japanese Marine Self-Defense Force, the JMSDF. But if you take a look at an IL-22M alongside this thing, you can see they're fairly similar aircraft. There's the IL-22M, there's the P-3 Orion, same amount of engines, same placement of the wings on the lower end of the fuselage, almost the same shape of the vertical stabilizer as well. They're very similar aircraft. So I would say that this, as far as the aircraft's shape is, I would say that this would be the closest aircraft in the West to the IL-22M. And so I hope that does address that question fairly well. A really good one. And I hope that everyone is really amazed with my ability to identify the shapes and forms of different kinds of aircraft. That is one thing I've grown up my entire life to do, is to identify aircraft, vehicles, and ships. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and thank you, because viewers like you make this channel possible and help this channel to keep on rolling. Y'all are the life's blood of this channel and help us to be able to do this. Of course, support means a lot, but on top of that, folks just supporting us in the live chat and saying we're doing a good job means as much as well. And so thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Santiago Flores, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Santiago, very much for that support. He says, good evening for support of this great channel. For a cold fan for the studio. And thank you. And he says, hope for another live broadcast, and please pick a live chat question, please, and cheers.
And thank you.
Cheers.
And clink. Thank you so much for enjoying this channel, Santiago, and supporting us to help us to keep this thing going. And I say this to everyone, but it is true. Y'all help this channel to keep going, and I gotta thank you so much for that. And also, you've been around forever, Santiago. You were an old guard of this channel, and I gotta thank you so much for being an old guard of the Leaf Spring Army, and of course, helping this thing to keep on rolling. And we will make sure to pick a live chat question. And so, cheers, clink. And what's the live chat, Matthew?
All right, and our live chat question is gonna go to, let's see here. It goes to Andres Robinet, who says, an accident in the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant benefits the Russians, as it would create backlash against nuclear power and force Europe to use OPEC plus oil.
All right, can you reread that one again? That was actually a very interesting point.
He said, an accident in the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant benefits the Russians, as it would create backlash against nuclear power and force Europe to use OPEC plus oil.
You know, I never thought of it that way, but that's actually in Russia's benefit. But that's if they survive long enough where anyone would buy OPEC plus oil, because I think we probably wouldn't respond too positively to them creating a nuclear meltdown at the power plant, so the world may cease to exist before Europe had to get OPEC plus oil. But that could be an unintended side effect of the ZMPP meltdown, is that people once again become even more wary about nuclear power, which is honestly illogical. You know, when you really look at the safety record of nuclear power plants and how many people it's killed versus how many people other forms of energy kill per megawatt, it's actually the lowest of them all. But anyways, with that, I thank you for bringing up a very interesting point, because that is a very interesting way to look at it. A really good way to look at it, too, and I've never thought of it that way. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Santiago, and of course, enjoying this channel enough to help us to keep this thing running. And of course, many of y'all know what we use that support for. We use it to keep the lights on. We use it to eat. We use it to sleep. We use it for everything that everyone has to do. We, of course, and of course, we make no pretense. We do this as a job, and this is what we do. I do it for 60 hours a week. Matthew does it for 40 hours a week, and y'all help to support us and help us to be able to do this as a job. And I got to thank you so much, Santiago, for appreciating this channel enough to support us so that we can keep on doing this. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to, let's see here, goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $12 super chat. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support as well. And she said, going to be working most of next week, so I'll pay you today. You deserve more, but it is what it is. Put this towards Papa treats, and please give them a cuddle for me.
And thank you so much for the support, Margaret Hemsley. We will give the corgis a cuddle. Oh, yeah, actually, I think we're giving them big cuddles before the stream, because little Sheba today, she threw up, and it was kind of sad because she was running around with us, and she was smiling and doing her little thing, and then you just heard, and she just threw up water all over the floor, and we went, oh no, what's wrong? And she acts so sad whenever she does anything like that. She acts like the world has ended, and so you gotta give the dog some solace. So that way he doesn't think it's done anything really bad, considering it couldn't really help it. But then we cuddled a little piggy, and then we played ball with the piggies. They had a little.
We have one of those little robotic ball machines called an iFetch that Mr. Corgi is bonkers about, and Sheba tries to tear it apart every time we play it. But those dogs love that game. That herding instinct comes out strong.
Man, that herding instinct comes out strong in Sheba when she clamps down on Mr. Corgi's spine. Oh man. But anyways, we will make sure to give him loads of cuddles because we love our corgis. And I got to thank you so much as well, Margaret, for the incredibly kind words and also the support. Any support helps this channel to keep on running. And of course, the support is completely voluntary. And that's one thing I think is very important for everyone to remember, is that this channel will run with or without support. We are dedicated to keeping this thing running regardless, but the support does help us to easily be able to do this as a job, because there is a part of me that says, regardless of whatever happens support-wise on this channel, this thing will keep running. And that's really the part that will keep this thing going. There's another part of me that goes, how in the world will I pay rent to live here in this basement, and also, everything else, if we don't get support? But then that largely gets canceled out because this thing will just run regardless. We will find a way. But I've got to thank you so much for the support, Margaret, because you help us to be able to do this as a job. And I got to thank you so much once again, because without folks like you, Margaret, this wouldn't be possible. And so with that, we will make sure to grab a live chat. And what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question this time is going to go to Angry Penguin, who says, Enforcer, has any KA combat ejection been successful so far?
Let's see. Let me check. KA-52 ejection seat. Or ejection Ukraine. Let's see here. At least, okay, so right here, according to Twitter, and this, oh yeah, so here was a KA-52 that got shot down over the Dnipro, well actually the Sea of Kiev, and this was on the 24th of February in 2022, and we can see a shoot right there. So at least in this one instance of the KA-52 being shot down, one of the pilots successfully used the ejection feature to escape the KA-52. So we know that they do work. That is the example right there, literally in the first few hours of the war, that the KA-52's ejection seat did work. So pretty pretty wild to see it worked even once, because it's such a convoluted and overcomplicated process for an ejection seat that it's insane to even think it works at all, even for one person. And once again, I have to remind y'all, it's not like an Apache where it just has to go through one helicopter blade. You have to blow off both sets of helicopter blades for the ejection seat to work. And somehow they both successfully got blown off the helicopter, and then one of the seats worked. We don't know if it was for the pilot or the gunner, but it does work in theory, and it did work in real life, at least for one helicopter pilot. I'm not gonna lie, I have to be honest, this is not really that bad looking of a helicopter. It looks pretty mean, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
It looks all right, but I can guarantee you that those pilots are dying if they try to eject. I doubt that seriously works in practice.
Well, we just saw it work for one guy.
Oh, where was that?
You didn't see it? It was on. It was
on. Show me again.
Here. This is a Ka-52 shot down over the Sea of Kiev on the 24th of February, and there is one parachute showing that one of the pilots of the Ka-52 was able to eject.
And this is a photo?
Yeah, this is a photo.
I would chalk this one up to speculation, because how do we really know he got out?
Because his chute's there and he's below it. You can see a little pixel there, and there's nothing.
How would not say Russian Ka-52 though?
Because
it's in smoke.
Because the helicopter group that flew over the Sea of Kiev was helicopters. There were no planes, and we saw it get shot down on another video, but I don't think we saw the ejection happen.
I don't know. I'll chalk this one up to not knowing, because that could have been any helicopter.
Let's see here. Let's see here. Does the K?
I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical here.
So let's see here. Oh, let's see. I know it works. It has to work.
I don't think this was a Ka-52. Change my mind.
Where in the world do you see that?
How people set up, you know how people like set up those little tents like on college campuses, and they put up a little sign like with some controversy on it and say "Change my mind."
Oh man, I hate those, man. Like they're like, and nothing good ever comes out of them. It's like the damn violence pit. You know, it's like it doesn't matter if it had good intentions. It's like, let's see who gets physically assaulted here within 5 minutes of this thing being set up. But let's see. I'm trying to find a video or a picture of this thing actually working. Ka-52 ejection.
I mean, we saw a video on Live Leak of them testing it. There might be a, you know, if Live Leak was still around, maybe a video of them getting chopped up by the blades.
That's all you would hear. Well, that's some clickbait right there. That's next level clickbait. Let's see here. I'm finding it hard pressed to see where any pictures were made.
Wait, there's one. There was one right there. It was a little short video on YouTube. You see that?
Where?
It's the top left, second from the left.
Let me go take this one off screen. This is a 3D model of a Ka-50's ejection seat working.
7-800.
Let me mute that real quick. 7-800-9-7. Okay, so this is once again another animation, kind of like War Thunder, of how it's supposed to work. But this is, in theory, how it works.
I'm sorry, fam. I'm calling cap on this one.
I mean,
the Russians didn't design anything like that.
Hey,
I can tell you right now.
I'm just saying it's not all the way out there, but, you know, it may work. Who knows? I'm just saying, man, it is the only one in the world with that feature, so I would kind of expect that it wouldn't really work too well, because it's never been done before. And everyone's saying they got to see the real thing. I want to show you the real thing. I'm gonna go on a search to try and find the real thing here for a minute. So everyone just sit tight. I'll try and find it. Let's see here.
You know, even in these 3D models right here, they don't show the action happening all at once. They show it in slow motion, like in segments, because it doesn't look like it'd be possible to happen that quick all at once.
Perhaps. Let's see. Man, it's really hard to find anyone, I think, using the ejection seat, because once you use it, the entire helicopter is lost. So, let's see here.
Everybody's calling cap on this one.
I know everyone's
calling cap, fam.
I know everyone's calling Cap. I'm trying to find something, Jack. I'm trying to find something, Jack, to prove that it works. Oh, man.
What's going on?
What happened? What? Wait a minute, hang on. I think I may have... Nope, that's for a fighter jet. That is not for the helicopter.
I have a feeling you won't find a video. For a reason.
Wait, hang on.
Man, I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Hang on, man. Hang on. I think I may have been able to find something. Nope. I can't find a video of that thing working. So I guess it would be factually correct to call Cap because we've never seen a video of that thing truly working. But with that, I suppose at this point we're on to the next one.
All right, and also SH Games said Capaholics, and I'd have to agree.
Capaholics.
But anyways,
we make it look easy. Walk with your boys.
Yes,
dude. No, actually, man, dude, that is exactly the line of thinking that the Russians have with the ejection seat. We make it look easy with the whole ejection thing, the animations and stuff, and then walk with your boys, which is what someone's supposed to be if it works.
Yeah, I seriously, like seriously speaking, doubt that it actually works. That would be something complicated even for, really high-tech Western manufacturers to come up with, much less Russia trying to come up with it.
I mean, you got a good point right there. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next Super Chat goes to Super Creech, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Super Creech, for that support. He says, this support comes from the heartbeat of America, my new job, puppy treats and coffee, and overall guess on withdrawal by Russia, not holding you to it. Just hope. Slava Ukrainians, LSA love.
And Slava Ukraine, and long live the Least-Wing Army. And thank you for your support coming from the heartbeat of America. The heartbeat of America is many things. In fact, it is the citizenry of this nation and the people who keep this democracy alive. And to that, I thank you all. But anyway, my new job, and congratulations on getting a new job. I hope it's a good one. And puppy treats and coffee. And I thank you so much for getting the puppy treats and the coffee. We can't even say this one, Matthew, even with our door closed, I believe, but they love FBs.
Yes, they do. Those flower bones from Sam's Club.
I can't say
crazy about those.
Yeah, I can't say it on my microphone because I'm actually closer to them and they may be able to hear that and then freak out there. So hopefully they didn't hear Matthew saying that, but still, they love those, and we'll be making sure to get even more of them. Because Sheba, I think she just eats them in like one bite. They're like the size of her head, and you give it to her, and she goes, "Boom," and she's like, "Give more," and we're like, "Dang, dog, you should be dead." But anyways, and also thank you for the support to the coffee fund. You help us to drink coffee. Believe it or not, that's a big deal on this channel, because without that, we wouldn't be awake right now to run this show. But let's see, overall guess on withdrawal by Russia not holding it to it. I would say probably by the middle part of next year, I would assume, or it may even go a little bit longer than that, maybe the end of next year, I would assume at this point. So we'll be here for a little while longer. And that's of course, expecting that the Russian government doesn't collapse. In the meantime, that's just expecting that the Russians kind of keep that all held together with glue and duct tape until the war ends and they run out of money. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support, Super Creech. You have been around forever, and you have helped to keep this channel running, and I gotta thank you so much once again, because folks like you make the thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next Super Chat goes to Joshua Matkin, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, Joshua, for the support. He says, Pig Oceans by remorse.
Pig Oceans? I don't know what he bought. Death? I guess he bought some death.
No, he chose that. He didn't buy it.
Perhaps.
That one threw you for a loop. It was supposed to be a joke. But
perhaps, maybe.
He woke up and chose death.
So I see you chose death. But still, with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. I don't know what it is, but I think my brain just went into a hard factory reset right there for some reason. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And I also saw Colleen Emsley saying in the live chat, I would rather jump than be ejected into the main rotor blades. Yeah, if there's some way to like jump out the side of it, I'm not sure if there really is. You could technically, I guess, have like a parachute on or something. I'm really dreaming here, but I wouldn't jump into the rotor blades. That would not be an option. Maybe like try to let the thing, auto rotate down and try to maybe soften the landing. I don't know how helicopters work that well, but she probably does. But what about you, Enforcer? You going to get chopped up or fall to the ground?
Man, I pull up, fly straight into the main rotor blades. Oh man.
Dang.
Well, I would be honest with you. I would never want to be in a helicopter in a bad situation like that, because the chances of surviving, honestly, would kind of be a little low from what I would assume, because there's really no way to get out of a helicopter. If you try and eject up, you go into the helicopter blades. If you go down, you just end up hitting the ground and dying quicker. If you go out the sides, it's largely the same thing, or the rotors will catch you trying to jump out of the side. Honestly, there's really no good way to get out of a helicopter if it's in a bad situation, so best not to be in one that's in a bad spot. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to JJ, who puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much for the support. And JJ said, why don't you Ukrainian forces shoot the mine-clearing rope that explodes over the trenches before they storm the trenches? It should at least shock and stun the hell out of them for a few minutes.
And great question. They actually could do something like that. We have seen them do it before, but I have a feeling that that's kind of frowned upon. Not because it's a violation of the rules of war or anything, it's just kind of frowned upon to go fling a giant explosive rope onto people and then blow the thing up. So I think they don't do it for that reason, but honestly, I think it would be a sound practice to disorient and maybe even wipe out Russian troops in an area, is to just go fling the mine-laying charge onto them and, just see what happens. So with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And man, the Russians be sitting there looking up in the sky, look, Igor, it's a rope. And then it starts falling on them. That's no rope, Igor. That's a freaking... And then it just blows up on them. It's like, man, I would not want to be on the other end of a mine clearer. But
man, they'd probably think the rope was like designed to help get them out of the trench. Oh, grab on, bliat. That's cool.
Dude, they'd be sitting there going, look, it's the Russian government giving us a little bit of support. They're literally throwing us a rope.
They're throwing us a lifeline, bliat. A death line.
Dude, look, it's J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now, believe it.
Oh, Lord.
I have a short-term memory loss from the concussion I got in my head. Called J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now. I need a lifeline. I need a lifeline. Look, there it is. And then the thing just blows up on him. Oh, man. But anyways, getting past the cheap musical based off of J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now, we are on to the next. But thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that was a pretty good way to address that.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat once more from Mark, Incompetent Drone Operator. And thank you, Mark, for the second support of the night. He says, okay, back to the mortar. There's no way it did not penetrate if it exploded. Maybe it was a dud fuse.
Oh, well, I mean, it did explode. Let me go to it again real quick. Let me go find it.
Christian once said, I hate you for putting the J.G. Wentworth in my head. That was an old commercial. I don't know where the Enforcer remembered that one from.
Oh, all right, Matthew, I remember everything. But this thing did blow up. We can see the little shrapnel fragments from where it blew up. And we can even see that these made it down to some of the ribs further down on the engine bay hood, all the way down here. And that does show that this little mortar round didn't just hit, because if it did, we most likely would have seen some kind of a remnant of the mortar round itself after it hit. But it did, in fact, explode. But what's so weird about that is that you can see the dent, the chunk it took out of this rib, but it didn't take anything out of the other ribs, just the shrapnel ran into those and then created a whole bunch of holes. But we can see the shrapnel mark showing that this thing did blow up, and apparently it just didn't work. And so, yeah, that's what it is. Apparently a BMP can survive an 82 millimeter mortar, but I don't really know how. Honestly, in my opinion, Mark, I don't really know how it survived either. It seems unlikely a BMP with its paper-thin armor would survive a direct hit to the engine bay from an 82 millimeter mortar, but I'm guessing it did. I mean, it looks like it did explode on impact, and it just ended up denting the engine bay significantly, but nothing major beyond that. And so with that, I thank you for the support, Mark. Who knows? Maybe it ended up just breaking up on impact, and that's the way it broke up. Who really knows? But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Nick C, who puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much for that support, Nick. He says, prediction. There are air assault units in the vicinity of Kherson, and Ukraine is softening up positions east of Kherson and across the Dnipro to prepare for an airborne and land assault. And what are your thoughts?
Oh, you're not supposed to say that stuff out loud. That's what they're doing. Don't say it out loud. But yes, that's most likely their plan. That's why they made a well, now that you've said it, now I'll just say it. That's why they're holding Dachi, because this is the only place you can build a pontoon bridge across the river, and so that's why they sent a force over there to hold it, is because the eventual plan will probably be to create a foothold on this area large enough that they have a safe perimeter to build that pontoon bridge on, and then ferry across the rest of their forces and start driving down the highway. So yes, that's largely their plan. You're not supposed to say that stuff out loud, though. You're supposed to just kind of know that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I know they're going to do that. And that's why when I sit there and I cover that area and I go, oh, this is really big, I don't say why it's big, because the Russians may not know that that's their plan. They may be thinking it's another raid across the river just for fun, instead of it actually having any kind of goal. But yes, that is most likely what they're doing. And so that, thank you so.
Silence, Schultz.
Man. Schultz! But anyway, so that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Trister1, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, LSA needs our flag, and he puts in a penguin. And thank you very much, Trister, for that support.
And thank you for the support, Trister. And we are still working on a flag in the background. We don't know when we'll have one. We'll have one eventually. Everyone, please be patient, because every time I came up with a flag design, it got trashed. And so then I would have to go back to the drawing board, and then another one would come out, and then it would be trashed, and then we make another one, and it would be trashed. So we're eventually going to come up with one. I don't know when, but it will be sometime in the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Hielsen, who puts in a 10 and says, thanks for the news.
And thank you so much, David Nielsen, for enjoying the news and helping this channel.
David Hielsen.
Can you say that one more time?
David Hielsen.
Thank you, David Hielsen, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you do make it possible for us to cover this news, and I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make this thing possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is from Sly Walker, who puts in a $9 donation. And thank you very much, Sly, for that support. And he says, take my money.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you, who enjoy this channel enough that you support us like that, you help us to make this thing possible. And I think what's amazing about that is that there is no badgering, there's no pestering, there's no harassing of people. Honey badger. But there's
no badgering.
But there's no badgering or anything that YouTube does that makes people feel like they have to support. There are things like that if we ran memberships on this channel, which we find tacky, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I got to thank folks like you so much for finding this channel to be worthwhile enough and appreciating it enough to support it. Because without folks like you supporting this channel, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep this thing rolling. And I don't say that for fun. I say that seriously. Y'all are the only reason we are able to do this as a job. And I've got to thank you so much to all of y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. Because if y'all didn't support this channel, where in the world would we be? We wouldn't be able to do this as a job. And to kind of explain behind the scenes why I say that, this is our only source of income, and we do this as a full-time job. I do this 60 hours a week, Matthew does it 40, and so if we were not able to support ourselves on this, we would have to go and get a actual job, and then that would take up all the time we use to do this. So it is a job, and y'all help us to be able to do this as a job each and every day and be able to put out short war summaries. Well, actually, they've kind of turned a little bit longer now. They're usually around 10 to 12 minutes long now, but it seems a load of y'all are loving them, and so we're going to keep doing them that way. And y'all help us to also do these streams as well. So I got to thank you so much once again for the support and giving us your money so that way we can keep this thing running, because folks like you who give us your money voluntarily just because y'all enjoy the channel, y'all help us to be able to do this as a job. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here real quick. I was checking something on Twitter. As I saw some folks mentioning there is actually a Twitter thing. So that brings us to our next super chat, which is from Dino Ress, who makes a return. It's good to see you again, Dino. And they put in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much for that support. And Dino said, I sent you a Twitter DM with the video of the KA-52 ejection. And I was just looking here in our Twitter DMs to see if I can find it. And Enforcer, it's our first one. It says The Good Doctor, and there's a picture of a dog for the profile picture.
Oh, yes, The Good Doctor. Let me go there and take a look at this.
Damn it, Jim. I'm a doctor, not a scientist.
Oh, it do work? Oh, that's
Let's
insane.
see that video, though.
Oh, it's got some
okay.
music in it. Let's see here. Let me go to where this is. Thank you, The Good Doctor. Thank you, I shall remember you. How do we get the messages off screen? How do we get them off screen? Oh, let's see. I don't know how to get these things. Oh, there we go. All right, so let me mute that, drag it over here. We actually have a video of this thing working. So there's a KA-52. It's very grainy. I'll keep that in mind. When you see the KA-52 get hit by a manpad, we can see the explosions of the propeller blades popping off, and we can also see the pilots ejecting. Very, very grainy, but it does work. You can see that right there.
Did we see anybody come out of it?
I think we did.
Is that him?
Hang on, I think that was
Isn't that the rotor, though?
Let's see, let's watch that again.
This reminds me of those, like, UFO videos where you really can't make out what the hell it is, but it's something.
Well, I believe this came... Where did this come from? This Russian hit by a Ukrainian manpad. The two puffs of smoke are the pilot and co-pilot ejecting from the helicopter. You can see one canopy... before the video ends, you can see one canopy begin to open. So that was the rotor blades popping off, and then at the end you could see the canopy exploding off. So that's the rotor blades right there exploding off. And then you can see a little bit of the canopy coming off right there at the very end, like in the last second.
I'm going to play the skeptic here for a second. How do we not know that the explosion somehow sheared or ripped the rotors off, and they didn't actually explode? And how do we know that the guy actually got out?
I would have to say we can't really see a lot. We can't really see much of anything in that clip. It's very grainy. So I'll also have to be a skeptic as well. I think we need a higher definition video. We need a David Attenborough out there with a 4K Ultra HD camera to see this thing eject. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much, Dino Rest, for getting this video for us. It does show one on film, but it's really hard to tell what it's really doing. But with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And also very interesting because it might have showed it. I'm just saying that we need to see a little bit more of a higher resolution. When was that filmed, by the way? Did it have a date on it?
I don't think it did. But everyone's saying that there is a video of that on Funker 530. So let's go to Funker 530. Funker 530.
He ain't going to throw a copyright on us for showing it, will he?
Man, I don't know. I hope he don't. We'll mute it. Let's see. Let's see. That's not it. I'm not seeing the one from Funker. And also probably want to play it safe. Because, you know. Wait a minute, hang on. What's this one? Okay. I was looking at these. I was like, oh, these are actually showing people ejecting from it. Nah, it's actually Arma 3. And I saw the graphics were a little off. And I was like, it's Arma 3. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the reason why I asked you when it was filmed is I saw Blue Flam say 1918. But I was sitting there thinking, you know, why is it filmed with like a potato if it's modern footage of the thing actually, you know, working properly? So, you know, kind of odd. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from Mark, Incompetent Drone Operator once again. And thank you, Mark, for the third support of the night. And he says, Groundhog Day. That mortar hit just looks like a hollow lump of metal fell from the sky with modest velocity. I bet to save money, they just skipped the explosive part.
If a dim, yeah, take out the gunpowder, put in some lead, please. Oh, okay. And then they start melting up the lead to pour in the top of the mortar so that way it just has the weight behind it. They may have done something like that. Who knows? It may have just been a dud round and it may have just hit the BMP's engine bay like it did and just caused minimal damage. Because it did look like it was just kinetic. It is crazy to think that a massive explosion from an 82mm mortar couldn't punch through paper-thin armor on the engine bay hood. So I would have to be honest with you, Mark. I'd have to agree with you here. I think it may have been a dud mortar round that hit the BMP, and they were just really lucky to come out of it with a very deep dent into the engine bay. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running for the 3rd time of the night. Because folks like you, Mark, do help this channel to keep on running. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be here right now. We would be at McDonald's. And so that...
Whoa.
What?
What, would be eating?
No, we would be having the Grimace shake. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Underscore, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Underscore, for the support. This is Underscore's first super chat, as they said in the first opening line, other than donations. I miss LSA when I'm working, but I'm glad I can help contribute to the lights and take a live chat question.
And I gotta thank you so much for your first support. And I gotta thank you so much for helping these lights to stay on. These lights are very important. You see, we don't keep the lights on. We just pay the rent that keeps the lights above our heads, the very same ones that we're under right now. And I gotta thank y'all so much for the support. I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping us to keep those lights on, because it's the only way we can do this thing. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the kind words as well, and being here with us forever. And thank you so much once again. And so with that, did they want a live chat, by the way?
Yes.
And let's get that live chat bled.
And the live chat question goes to, let's see here, Avari Mendebratis, who says, are we seeing Putin as, my brain's like cramping up here, hold on.
Whoa, what happened?
Excuse me. Are we seeing Putin as Julius Caesar, and they put in parentheses epilepsy, planning his own death by having Prigozhin, Octavian, prepped to take over?
Nah, I don't think so. Nah, he's not that smart. He's not Caesar. Caesar was smart. This guy, he's stupid. He's just gonna end up having the government collapse around him. He's gonna run like a small scolded child. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much for our support. And CK Bold says, take a live chat question. And of course we will. And thank you very much once again. And the question goes to, let's see, it goes to Christopher Miller, who says, whatever happened to that plane of Russian diplomats heading towards the U.S. after the coup?
It apparently wasn't carrying diplomats. It was going to pick up their diplomats from the embassy in the United States. So that's what happened to it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Paul Plonsky, who puts in a 5 and says, my city of Milwaukee, home of Harley Davidson, has donated quite a bit to Ukraine, and they are selling a blue and yellow t-shirt with 1% of sales going to Ukraine.
That's pretty cool. And also, that's pretty cool to hear that Harley Davidson was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I didn't know that. That's news to me. Did you know that, Matthew?
I didn't.
That's news to you too, then. I actually didn't know that Harley came from Milwaukee. But you know,
a really good brand of power tools is also Milwaukee, you know.
Tell me, is it Los Angeles Power Tools?
No, it's literally called Milwaukee.
I thought it was Detroit Power Tools that was based in Milwaukee.
No, that's Detroit. You're thinking about Detroit Diesel, what makes engines.
No, I thought, no, Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong here. Milwaukee Power Tools come from New York City.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm telling you, I mean, based off of the name, Matthew, hell, they could come from anywhere. They could come from Kalamazoo. I mean, who knows? I mean, you know, Milwaukee. Hell, that could be anywhere.
Oh, come on. Damian Long said, LOL, Milwaukee Power Tools are made in China, homie. Well, look, they might have been designed in Milwaukee at least. I don't know.
I mean, maybe. And also, Matthew, I saw you got rid of some hater. They said, are these guys ChatGPT? Man, if ChatGPT was able to get to where they could sound like we do, I'm not going to lie, that would be impressive with all the crazy stuff we say and the crazy stuff we sound like. That would be pretty wild if ChatGPT was able to do that. And anyways, why in the world would ChatGPT be thanking people for helping it to keep the lights on. It would just exist for free. So it's like, that doesn't really make much sense. You know, Matthew, we are nothing more, though, than a government psyop. That's like the new buzzword now. It's psyop.
Yeah, where's my CIA paycheck anyway? It still hasn't arrived. They've been promising it for months.
Man, I'm telling you, man, the CIA told us months ago that if we got on YouTube and we sat here and we ran a YouTube channel, they would pay us. We haven't been paid yet. That's why we have to keep on thanking y'all for y'all's support, because there's no other support in the background from the CIA, and they were supposed to be supporting us for a long time now, and we're still wondering where it is. One day, Matthew, we're actually going to get a call from the CIA, and they're going to tell us to stop kidding around like that, because they were directly trying to attach ourselves with the CIA. They're going to be like, hey, stop that.
I'm going to say, what you going to do, punk? Make my day.
That's it. Then they're going to get raided. But anyways, with that, I hope that kind of addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, I'm not messing around the CIA. They better send that paycheck already. But anyways, up next we have a $5 super chat from Epic Trains Canada, who says, add this to your pizza fund, and Igor, Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running with our pizza fund. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support our pizza fund. You help us to eat for real, and I'm starving right now. I don't know about you, Matthew, but I'm hungry.
Man, I'm pretty hungry too, I gotta say.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I could dig into some of that turkey we have upstairs. I'm gonna murder that when we. Well, I'm just saying that hypothetically. It's a figure of speech. But I'm going to murder that turkey when we get upstairs. That thing is going to go. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support to the pizza fund. We will have pizza eventually, and with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, Zelensky said, quote unquote, I need ammo, not a ride. And then Putin said, quote unquote, I need a ride, not ammo. And then Kadyrov said, quote unquote, I need a goat, not ammo. And then Prigozhin said, quote unquote, Shoigu, where's my ammo?
Shoigu! Esto no me propasa. Assassinated, but anyways, I would say in response to that, Kadyrov didn't say, I need a goat, not a ride. He said, I need a goat, period. That was it. That was it. There was no ride or nothing. He just said, I need a goat. But anyways, with that, thank you for the support. That gave me a laugh. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel, helping us to keep this thing running, and also helping us to eat. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Truster1 yet again. This time he puts in a 20 and leaves no comment, being very mysterious on this one. And thank you, Truster, very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you, Trista, in-house physician in the chat, for the support. You help this channel to keep on running. You help us to eat. And right now, Matthew, what in the world could we eat? You know what I was thinking, Matthew? I wish we had those little Hawaiian rolls from Publix, and we had some of that cracked pepper turkey, and we got some mayonnaise, and we put the mayonnaise in the rolls, and then the cracked pepper turkey. Honestly, I'm kind of wanting that right now. You know, a couple of those.
Man, I'm telling you. But Truster said my money was an adjunct to yesterday's Five Guys, so he's adding on to the bill.
He's adding on to the Five Guys bill. So now, Matthew, we can actually afford 2 whole meals. We can afford a burger, fries, and maybe a milkshake for me and for you.
Man, I might be able to get a morsel of that expensive burger.
Man, that burger would be expensive, boy. That thing be so freaking expensive. But still, thank you so much for the support, Truster, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you do make it possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Nemo. And welcome.
Is that Nemo the fish?
Yeah, I was about to make a joke, but then I passed on it. But Nemo said, is the IL-22M more functionally similar to the AWACS E3 or the National Airborne Operations Center NAOC, also called the E4B or Doomsday Plane?
I thank you so much for the support. I honestly think that would be out of my league to talk about, because I don't really know a lot about command aircraft. I know that the Ilyushin 22, as far as its design theory goes, is very similar to a P-3 Orion, but I wouldn't really know what its actual role in the Russian army would be similar to here in America. So unfortunately, I would have to declare ignorance on that, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Lewis Bryant, who puts in a 5 and says, yo, guys, Has a nuclear Armageddon percentage decreased a few percentage points or increased? And what's that doomsday clock be saying?
I'll be honest with y'all. Doomsday clock's kind of a little silly. I never really pay attention much to the doomsday clock because, you know, it's very arbitrary. You know, it's just what people consider a little bit more important. So, you know, you could jingle a cat toy in front of these people who run the doomsday clock, and there could actually be a nuclear war going on in the background. They'd say, it's a minute till midnight. And then, you know, you take away the cat toy in front of them, jingling it around in front of their face. And then there's a small conflict going on in Sudan, and then they'll go, it's 10 seconds to midnight, you know, and it's like, this is a little silly. It's really just based off of what y'all see. It's not even really about what's going on in the world completely. But anyways, I would say, I don't know about the doomsday clock, but I'm not really a big fan of that thing. And as far as nuclear wars goes, I think we are a little further away from it than we have been at other points in the war so far. But if we're considering the ZNPP to be a part of that, I would say we're actually far closer than we've ever been. So it's really relative on what you consider nuclear war or not. But I hope that does answer that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Blue Flam 777, who puts in a $10 super chat, like I said. And thank you very much for that support. And they said, my wife says if I don't stop making puns about Russia, she's going to hit me. If that's the way it's going to be, then Soviet. Question to the chat. I know, I realized I screwed that up at first.
And apparently the Lee Spring Army is helping to increase the domestic violence cases in the United States one at a time. And I hate to hear that, William. I hope you're ready for some bruising, because here comes some cruising. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support. We will make sure to send a question to the chat. Thank you so much once again for putting in a nice cheesy pun. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And our question goes to Dreamweaver, who says, didn't Prigozhin hire a MOD general after Putin canned him? He looked like a troll or the heat miser, but I'm sure he had high-level contacts in the MOD.
Yeah, he did hire a guy. I forgot his name, but he was some white-haired guy who looked like a gremlin. It looked like every time he popped up on screen, he was about to go. Don't feed that thing after midnight, by the way. That thing will multiply. But
yeah, that's a pretty good rendition of the Gremlin song.
Oh, thank you. I remember that movie because I remember that little Mogwai thing getting the water on its back, and it sat on the floor, like banging its fist into the ground, going. It's like the little balls popped out of its back. But anyways, moving on from that. He probably did have some high contacts in the Russian MOD. It's proven now with Surovikin being arrested because he was a secret VIP member. He was Wagner Platinum. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Neil Vizanant, who puts in a 5, and says, how long until they start using crap from the old Russian Empire?
Well, probably not that long. I mean, the Mosin Nagant technically was used by the Russian Empire, so they're already using stuff from the Russian Empire right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nasty Clark, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much for that support. He said, a third day of my special watching operation. Look up the 2007 Estonian cyber attack. Cheers. Last day as a free man. Wedding tomorrow. Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Let's see. Estonian cyber attack. Let's see. Also, and congratulations on being married. I'm sorry I got distracted here for a minute, making sure we were pulling up the right thing. But congratulations on getting married. I hope you have a fun time tomorrow. And don't think it's your last day being a free man. There's a whole new kind of freedom that comes with having a wife. And so I hope you have a great deal of fun with that. But let's see here. Most of the attacks, let's see, attacking ping floods, botnets, spamming, bigger news portals. Research also shown that larger conflicts took place to edit the English language version of the Bronze Soldier's Wikipedia page. Let's see, the onslaught specific, let's see, NATO's response. Assessment resulted in further legalities, opinion on experts. This is pretty deep. I think I'd actually have to read this off stream. But very interesting here, and I thank you for sharing that with us. And also, I hope you have a fun wedding tomorrow. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Chester Meath, which is a play on Master Chief. Clever. He says, with today being day 491, I would like to shout out DNRGW 491, the largest operational 3-foot narrow gauge steam locomotive. Also has a pizza side gig.
Wait, hang on. Wait, hang on. Hold on. Well, I say you're choke. Give me that again. The DN such and such.
It's DNRGW 491.
Let's see here. Oh, it's this one. I thought he was talking about one in Britain. I've seen this thing before. It's actually quite famous in the American train spotting world. The Rio Grande 491. And it's a narrow gauge train, I believe, used in, if I'm correct, it's New Mexico or Colorado. I'm not really sure which one it was, but really cool and actually pretty neat shout out as well. We don't have a lot of train enthusiasts here, and so really neat. And I thank you so much for the support and giving a shout out on the 491st day of the war for Rio Grande 491. And also, it just looks really cool. It's one of those, I guess you could say, classic-looking American steam locomotives, at least the narrow gauge variety, and it certainly exists in the modern world, in the hearts and minds of the public. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and a really cool thing to shout out on day 491 of the war. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Moyers, who puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you, David, for the support. He says, since our political leaders... let's see here. I'm going to send this one over to the enforcer. I'm not sure if this is political enough that we can't address it or not. So let me send that over to Discord and get it for review.
It's good. You got a green light. I was able to read it.
All right. So David said, since our political leaders lack the sack to label the orcs a terrorist nation, please post a list of businesses that continue to pander their wares to them so the LSA can start to boycott their monies.
And I thank you for the support, David Moyers. And I would agree that the leaders of the United States, both the congressmen and also the president, lack any kind of a ball or balls to be able to carry through with labeling the Russians as terrorists. Actually, I believe Congress did. It was almost unanimous, and then the president turned down the idea, which was really stupid. And I'm not getting political or anything, but when you have both houses of Congress almost unanimously agreeing to label the Russians a terrorist state, and then the president goes against that of the Congress, which was hundreds of people almost acting in concert to get that through to him, and then to just shoot that down, that was honestly stupid. But anyways, moving on from that, I would like to do something like that, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a problem legally there. If we were to start listing companies, and we ended up listing one of those companies wrongly, like, for example, let's say that the brand new KFC that was opened in Russia that actually isn't run by Yum, we say that KFC is actually officially operating and is in business in Russia, although they're not, and it's a ripoff KFC that's in operation over there that has nothing to do with Yum. Let's say we put that on the list, and then KFC ended up losing business here in the United States because of a false statement that we put out. We could end up being sued for that, and we could probably end up losing.
That sounds like defamation.
That is actually defamation. We could end up being sued for that, and we could lose our shirts because they would have a pretty valid case against us. Our statements would have impacted the business that they were getting off of a completely untrue statement. And so if we ever did something like that, it probably wouldn't be able to include all of the businesses because there would be some gray area like with KFC where people don't really know that it isn't KFC operating over there. The Russians reopened KFC and it's a ripoff. And so there would be a lot of gray area, and the list wouldn't really be accurate, and there therefore wouldn't really be any good reason to do that. Defamation is serious, especially if it affects someone, especially if it affects a business's income. It becomes incredibly serious. Things like defaming someone, like saying they're running a scam with absolutely no proof, or trying to say that a company is doing business somewhere in an effort to hurt their business. That is also defamation as well, and that could get you into very serious and very hot legal water. And although the U.S. justice system works off of a premise of innocent until guilty. As far as defamation goes, you are pretty much guilty from the outset, especially if it's in writing. So we don't really want to go down that track.
That's kind of true to an extent. A little bit.
Well, we're trying to simply explain it here, man. Simply explain it. We're not trying to get into all of the details here or anything, but we don't really want to get down that track because we could end up losing everything if we end up labeling a company wrongly, and then their business is affected because of that, and it's traced all the way back to here. But still, thank you for the support. Pretty cool idea, though, nonetheless. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, Chaster Meef said, what about the pizza part? You didn't address the pizza part about the locomotive.
Oh, the pizza part. I actually don't know about the pizza part with Rio Grande 491. Well, pizza, Rio Grande 491. Let's see here. Wait, hang on. So you can actually... The Drive has something out on this. You can actually bake a pizza? Wait, is this just shoving one into the boiler box? I don't know. Let's see. 500 degrees Fahrenheit. This heat all while baking the pie through not burning it, in theory. So this guy is just sticking it into the boiler box of the coal bunker, I believe. Yeah, he's doing that. So it's nothing special.
Why you gotta look like that when you put it in the cold box? You gotta look at the camera all funny.
Man, he's soy jacked on that thing. I'm not gonna lie, man. But apparently he cooked a pizza in that thing. I have heard of people. Well, I've heard of a lot of British engineers on LNER and GWR trains. Well, really all of them, including LMS and also what was the other one? It was LNER, LMNL. Oh yeah, and Southern. They would usually cook breakfasts on their shovels. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend that because there would be a lot of coal dust if the shovel had already been used that morning. That most likely was on that shovel, and you're cooking eggs and bacon and stuff on it, and I'm sure that's not good. But it was talked about, and it was something that was done. It's just that I would not want to eat anything off of a coal shovel, to be honest with y'all. Coal is not good for you. Even coal dust is not good for you. I hope that does address the pizza part fairly well. I didn't know anyone had actually cooked a pizza in that thing. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support. And sorry I forgot about that a little earlier.
All right, and our next one is a $5 super chat from Sebastian Bolts, who says, I'm late to the live chat. Can you please tell me a quick recap on the nuclear power plant?
So a quick recap. It has not blown up yet, thankfully. U.S. officials are saying it's nothing of concern. The Polish and the Ukrainians are still saying it's something of very serious concern and needs to be acted on immediately. But right now, from what we understand, the power plant is in a precarious but stable condition. And so I hope that does recap that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Marc-Andre Brunette. And thank you very much for that support. He says, thanks LSA, and awesome thanks to both of you for making us feel like we're family. A family of good human being, doing our best for helping Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the kind words, and you make me feel like I'm back at Publix with that kind of wordage. We're a family here. We care for each other. Can I have a day off? No, shut up. Sit down. But we're a family here. We take care of each other. We love each other in the name of Mr. George. I'm just kidding, but still... Thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you so much for enjoying the kind of community we've made here. It is an amazing community, 100%, and I've got to give a huge credit to everyone who is here with us because y'all make this community what it is. And so thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Dupper Bob for putting in that consistent $2 support, and we appreciate it very much, Dupper. And of course, thank you for helping keep this thing running. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Danny Coco, who says, no one's seen Prigozhin. Did he get out of Rostov alive?
He did get out of Rostov alive, and we have seen Prigozhin. He actually made a audio address, and we have seen several pictures since then of him possibly in St. Petersburg, and I believe also in Belarus as well. And also we've heard that he's returned back to Moscow and he's negotiating with the Russian government. That was heard yesterday. So we have heard and seen of him. He is alive. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. We're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Danny Coco, once again, who puts in another 2 and says, DYK takeoff lights are primarily to ward off birds, question mark.
Maybe. They may possibly be. I'm not entirely sure on that. But with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And with that being said, we are out of super chat questions. So once again, thank you all for helping to support the channel, and we're moving on to our Morse code of the night. Tonight it was solved by Mark Hodges, C. Fay, Cliff Simonson, Earl Benu, and Paul Schultz. And also good night to you, Trister1. I would have typed it, but sadly I can't get my hands over there to the keyboard, but good night to you. And the Morse code said tonight, how does Russia like itself when it looks in the mirror? Glory to Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
That's the sound of money, and y'all got the Morse code message correct. Again, thank y'all so much once again for doing that on the 491st day of the war. This incredible skill, and it amazes the Elite Spring Army every single time y'all do it. And so thank y'all so much once again for that, and y'all did get the Morse code message correct. And so with that, we are on to the next one. While I try and go a million miles an hour, my mouth really just isn't there tonight to be able to do a million miles an hour. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And our first live chat question goes to George Ferguson, who says, what have you heard about the Russian Navy and USA?
I have not really heard a lot about the Russian Navy and the USA. We did hear that the Russian Navy sent 2 warships off the coast of Taiwan, but we hadn't heard anything in relation to the Russian Navy and the USA directly. If you're talking about a comparison to the Russian Navy and the US Navy, we would wipe the floor. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jeremy Burton, who says, did you see the news about the Russian banker that did a swan dive from a magical window?
I did not. I'll be looking around for that, because I always am very interested to hear what kind of scores they got from the Olympic Committee. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, do you think the public events of Putin have all been body doubles?
Perhaps. I'm not going to say most likely, perhaps. There's a part of me that says yes, there's a part of me that says possibly not, but I would lean more so towards yes, they're most likely body doubles. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is from SH Games, who says, it seems clear that Poland, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania are clearly the leaders of NATO, and at this point, being the vanguard of support, militarily, politically, and per capita, and thoughts. And I'd have to disagree with that very strongly.
I'd have to strongly disagree with that. They're certainly not the leaders of NATO, because if they were, how come the United States is always the one telling people what they can and can't do in NATO?
And also, we're primarily the ones bankrolling it.
Yes, so I would, let's see, NATO contributions by country. So let's go to the funding tab. Hopefully they have something about the funds. So, this, let's see, and does it say how much this is in billions? So I'm not sure if this is in billions or what, but the United States actually contributes the same amount as Germany does to NATO annually, according to this chart. Let's see. 31 following the accession of Finland. But this doesn't say how much money this is in like billions or millions of dollars. I would assume it's billions. And we can see that the United Kingdom, let's see, the United States is number 1, Germany's number 2, the United Kingdom is number 3, France is number 4. And then from there, it goes into the peanut gallery, and really no one puts in massive amounts of money beyond those 4 countries. So I would say that Poland and the Baltics are certainly not the leaders of NATO, because they don't even put in as much money as the top 4 countries do combined, or a single one of them combined. Like, if we find Poland on this list, and let's find them, they put in nearly $3 billion a year, and then we find the other Baltic countries, Estonia, they put in around 120 million a year. Let's see here, what else? Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And so here's Latvia and Lithuania, and they put in 158 million. They put in 254 million. So they are hardly even getting close to being half of what France puts in annually, as far as NATO membership goes. And so I would say they're certainly not the leaders, because, well, actually, someone just said this is actually the percentage of support that NATO gets. So this is divided down into a 100% pie chart, and this is how much each of them contribute percentage-wise. So even then, all 4 of those countries only contribute to being about 5.7% of NATO's over. Well, actually, hang on. Poland only puts in 2.95. So when you add them all together, they're like 3.75% of all the funding that NATO gets. The United States is 16% alone. So I have a feeling that they're not really leaders of NATO. Someone said they helped with 1 million refugees. Yeah, they did, but that's not really a NATO military alliance side of things. That's a European Union side of things more so than a NATO thing, because NATO is a military alliance. It's not really about humanitarian efforts or economics or anything like that. It's all about just the military side of things, and so that would end up being an EU issue more so than a NATO issue. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, in my opinion. I would say if another country rather than the United States was the leader of NATO, it would either be the United Kingdom or Germany. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Mediers, who says, any update on the surrenders in the east of Ukraine?
We have heard some news about surrenders in the area of Bakhmut. We heard that the VDV surrendered south of Bakhmut and nearly an entire company's worth, but we haven't really heard any more about surrenders rather than that. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Value Radar, who says, do you have any good evidence of how many of the NATO-trained Ukrainian brigades have been committed to the counteroffensive, and tasks and purposes implies that they're still probing for weaknesses?
It appears that they are, at least according to the Ukrainians, having learned from the first probing, they are now in the full offensive right now. From what we understand, there's still only around 30 to 50% of the Western-raised forces in operation right now in the Southern Front, but I don't think we have an exact number at this moment, unfortunately. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Roy Hughes, who says, I think that the coup was a false flag so Putin can position him and his private army in Belarus with the nuke to open a key front. And thoughts?
And I would doubt it, because considering that they shot down a very important IL-22M, that makes the coup more real than it ever could have been, because Wagner probably didn't know that that was an incredibly important IL-22. They probably thought it was recon IL-22 and ended up shooting down a command post that was incredibly important for Russian operations in Ukraine. And so if they were trying to help themselves out in the war, it's certainly not helping by shooting down a vital command post that they have very few of. So in my opinion, just based off of that one fact, there's a million others of them. Well, a million other facts that could be used to say it was a real deal coup. I would say that it wasn't, that isn't the case in my opinion. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one, excuse me, this one goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, instead of Russia getting Alaska, we should see if they'd be interested in Oregon or Washington states. And what are your thoughts? My thoughts is they can take any of those states over our dead bodies. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm never one into pawning off the United States. Off of my political beliefs, or pawning off citizens for one reason or another. I've heard things like that before. I would have to be honest with you. Every American is something I would fight and die to protect, because I'm never one into just pawning people off to the enemy just because I disagree with them. That makes no sense to me. And of course, one statement I haven't seen that exists nowadays is the statement that Abraham Lincoln made, in which he said, "A house divided cannot stand." And nowadays, everyone thinks that dividing the house is the only way it can stand, and I think that's the wrong way to look at it. America is a country unto itself. There's no reason to pawn off or hand over parts to other countries just because you don't like those parts. This is America, and it's here to stay the way it is. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is JR Does Stuff, who says, do you think now that Putin is so weak, he might pivot to decreasing troops and start pulling out of Ukraine, and he could use the excuse of needing to shore up his home defense, question mark?
That's possible. We haven't seen that yet, and I think Putin is pretty determined to not pull troops out of Ukraine because the situation is already tough for them as it is, and they could start to seriously lose the war, and they're already seriously losing it, but it will get even worse if they start to do that. So I have a feeling he'll most likely try and rely on the internal security forces that are there, the Rosguardia and other units that haven't been deployed to Ukraine, to try and keep the peace inside of Russia. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I gotta thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure knowing that so many of y'all have found this to be a great stream tonight. There are still 4.5 thousand of y'all here right now, and if y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe. It makes us really happy when y'all subscribe. It lets us know that we're doing a good job, and it also keeps y'all apprised of when this news comes out. We run live streams like these 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night. The only night we do not run a stream on is Monday. And you can always count on us to make a war summary every single day of the week, 7 days a week. without fail. Unless if there is some kind of a serious event or something else is going on in the background, then there may not be one, but that's going to be very few and far in between. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraini!
And good night, LSA, and Slava Ukraine. See you tomorrow.
Yes.